The story starts off with a girl sadly thinking, "What a boring life," as she's about to get killed horribly by a savage werewolf. She thinks she was stomped on and made fun of, and no one even wanted to save her. A puny existence, so she wants to die already, she wants to be happy. But right then, the girl sees a person with long hair floating in the air, telling her that her face says she has a boring life. Hearing that, tears start dripping from the girl's eyes, as she thinks if God were to save her, she'd want to be saved. The main character thinks he realized something when he was a child, that people can't resist death. Even if they want to live, they'll still get killed. One night in a hospital, a nurse once asked her colleagues if they knew that there are ghosts in the hospital. She said that deceased patients' spirits would stand in their rooms, and a ward boy said, the operation room's light switches would flick on and off. Hearing that, another nurse entered the room and nervously asked who's handling the night patrol, and her colleagues waved at her telling her to have a safe trip. After that, the nurse went for the patrol worriedly thinking, ghosts are scary, not really, but she should go back soon. Then she said, well, they should be real, humans are much scarier than ghosts. Right then, she saw a shadowy figure with long hair in front of her. She screamed out loud in terror, and the person hurriedly told her to wait and not shout, calling her Ashima-san. Hearing that, the nurse surprisedly asked if that voice, if it's Osamu-kun. She told him that he can't come out on his own, as they don't know when it'll trigger again, and Osamu told her he's sorry. He explained that Sugiyama-san said there are ghosts in the hospital, so he wanted to have a look at it himself. He was waiting with his smartphone, as he wanted solid proof. Oshima found it troublesome and asked if he wanted to see ghosts. At that, Osamu excitedly said if they can see them, it means they emit light, not heat waves or electrons. He added that he has a thermography app on his phone. It'll pick up any red or purple light and prove that ghosts do exist. Oshima seemed surprised but didn't really understand much. Then she told him it's good to try stuff, but she asked if he didn't create a steam explosion in the hospital's backyard before. It was great that no one got hurt, but she asked why he's so interested in ghosts. Osamu thought a bit and said he just finds it interesting, and he's just curious as to where he'll end up after he dies, as he'd be scared if he didn't know that. The nurse tried to console him saying, it's okay, they'll find a cure. But then Osamu showed her his long hair and said he left it to grow, which is what his mother asked him to do. But he doesn't think he'll be able to cut it after all. He tried to tell Oshima something else, but right then she stopped him. She told him with a smile that he'll look good in short hair, so he better come and show it to her, as she'll be waiting, which gives Osamu solace. After that, Oshima helped him walk toward his room, while Osamu thought, Delacort Harris Fueton. It's an incurable disease he has had since he was 9. 30 years ago, 3 doctors from England discovered this disease. They don't know the source nor the cure to it. Doing a full body check will only show healthy results, but it can still trigger anytime. Osamu understood that their body will suddenly be engulfed in pain, and their organs will malfunction. No matter how many times his body was checked, nothing abnormal at all was found. This rare and extreme disease was only reported 6 times around the globe, and he's the only Japanese with it. As Osamu entered his room, he saw some flowers beside his bed and remembered another patient of that hospital asking him if he knows the name of this flower. She said it's called I am. It means hope in flower language. Then Osamu excitedly said it's a perfect flower for I am. And I am asked if that isn't right, as she'll become a doctor and cure him. Osamu amazedly asked if really, and I am said, yeah, she'll cure him, she promises. So Asuma understood that everyone believed that his disease could be cured. He honestly is not counting on it, but he also doesn't want to die without doing anything. He wants to become someone of value. He doesn't want to die as a worthless person. But right then, Osamu started coughing up blood badly and got to the floor. Seeing that, Oshima hurriedly went up to him, worriedly calling his name. She asked if he can hear her, as it's okay. Help will be right here, and kept calling his name. While Osamu realized it's here again, but this might be it. And then he started losing consciousness. After a while, Osamu opens his eyes and finds himself out in a forest, and a deer peacefully drinking water from a wetland. At that moment, a demon aims his bow and arrow at the deer, and the deer immediately grows out a third eye from its forehead. Right then, as the demon shoots the arrow at it, the deer tries to move away from there, but it still gets hit. And then the demons excitedly go up to it to salvage it. Seeing all that, Osamu confusedly wonders where he is. He tries to look at his hands and finds 2 shadowy figures, so he wonders if these are his hands. He questions if he's dead. He remembers everything. He was sick and spent his life in the hospital. He had a family, and he drew his last breath in his hospital room. Osamu thinks he remembers, but he wonders, he knows it's his memories, but it felt like he was not the one who experienced it. But then, looking at the demons, he wonders what those are, as it's obviously not from his era. So Osamu comes to the conclusion that this is a dream, his disease triggered, he fainted, and he's dreaming. He believes that those Oni-looking monsters are his imagination. But right then, one of the monsters notices him and shoots an arrow at him, which startles him. However, the arrow passes right through him and hits a tree behind him, which surprises Osamu, so he totally believes that it has to be a dream. It must be thanks to the harsh pain just now, so he'll wake up soon enough and see the usual ceiling. But at that moment, the monster starts running at him. Seeing that, Osamu frightenedly screams. He doesn't want to die and raises his hand. Immediately, the monster stops and falls into the wetland water and stops moving. Then some kind of energy starts sipping out of its body and gets into Osamu's hand. At that, he confusedly wonders what that was. He understands that he raised his hand, and the monster died, and it looks like he's sucking something like an energy from it. Osamu thinks he can feel a bigger existence inside him, so he wonders if there's something besides him gaining power as well. Right then, the other monsters also notice him and start running at him. Then Osamu raises his hand and starts sucking their energy as well. But he finds that they don't die. He frustratedly tells them to die already, and then he wonders, so if it's slower the more enemies there are. Osamu cries, thinking that he doesn't want to die anymore. He requests the monsters to die, but his frustration quickly turns into anger as he orders them to die. After that, all the Oni-looking monsters there die and fall into the wetland water, and Osamu somewhat regains his human-like form. Then he thinks that he has solved the issue for now, but he wonders what is this power, why their attacks won't hit him. If he's a ghost now, he doesn't get it. Osamu understands that the only things he knows right now are that this is not the world he's familiar with. And he can absorb others' life force. He'll call it absorb because it just clicked, and it feels like the bigger existence inside him is trying to do something. It feels like he's saving up strength for himself. Then Osamu looks at his hands and finds that they are different now, so he wonders if they changed. He thinks he should check maybe a mirror or something, and looks at the wetland. So then, he goes up to it and dips his hand inside, and as soon as he sees his reflection in the water, he remembers his name, Takamitsu Osamu. He thinks right, that's his name, he remembers now, but he wonders if this was the face he wanted. He knew what happened, but it just didn't feel real. He wonders if Osamu died, if this is the afterworld, if he reincarnated with Takamitsu Osamu's memories, as it's too real to be a dream. And that bloodlust from just now, he remembers thinking, he doesn't want to die. He understands that was Takamitsu Osamu's feelings, so he might be awake both in this world and that one. But he flies up high and thinks that he can be sure of one thing. He doesn't want to die, since he has gotten a second chance. He doesn't want to die for nothing again. Osamu clenches his fist as he decides that he'll live. For that, whoever threatens him, he'll eliminate them. But then he thinks Takamitsu Osamu. He knows that's him, but he doesn't think it'll work, so he might as well change his name as well. He knows that Osamu can also be read as Shu. He thinks that sounds good, so he'll leave it be. And as for Takamitsu, he thinks of some names like High Life, Tall, Ray, Expensive, Optical. He decides on Arch. He says it means being superior, so it's good. He also decides to add light with that. Then he finally comes up with Shu Arch Light and says he thinks it's decent. Osamu adds, well, even if he has decided on that, no one's here to witness it, and he'd rather stay uncertain as to who he is. After that, he gets thoughtful as he questions what to do. He's neither sleepy nor hungry. And then he realizes that he can levitate too, so he wonders if he turned into an actual ghost. Right then, Osamu hears some footsteps coming in his direction. He hurriedly looks in that direction and finds a boy dragging his friend Freddy there, excitedly saying it's a mountain of goblin corpses. Freddy finds it hard to keep up with his friend's pace, so he tells his friend Mijil to wait and slow down, while Osamu looks at them sitting on a tree branch and thinks, those are humans. Seeing the goblin corpses, Freddy asks if there was anything that can go against goblins in this forest. Mijil says, not that he knows of. But he tells Freddy whatever it is, they should pull it up and burn it, as if the corpses spread a plague. It'd be a disaster, so he uses a rope to pull up the bodies, while Osamu observes them. As Mijil pulls up corpses, he notices that there's no trauma of any kind, so he guesses it's a ghost, but Freddy says the lower classes can't do this much. Then Mijil chants some words, and after a while, a magic circle shows up on his palm and it generates fire. Seeing that, Osamu surprisedly wonders what that is, if that's magic. After that, Mijil excitedly tries to throw the fire at the corpses, calling it fireball, but it explodes immediately. At that, he frustratedly asks what he's missing, and Freddy says imagination, more specifically, the kind of phenomenon that he wants to create. He needs to tell the element through chanting. He explains that magic is a skill they learn in the first year, and he should already be used to it by now. Hearing that, Mijil sadly says he should know not to argue with him when he's down. Then he says that he's so frustrated he's going to burn it down using magic equipment, as Osamu sees that this time, it's a gauntlet that appeared out of nowhere. Freddy seems surprised by that, as he says it's a waste of magic power, so he tries to stop Mijil. But right then, Mijil uses his equipment to throw powerful flames at the goblin corpses and burns them. After that, he proudly says he's a natural-born magician, so he's pretty good at it, and becoming an S rank isn't a dream at this rate. But Freddy worriedly tells him no. If he shouts like that, he'll attract the monsters. Right then, Mijil gets shocked to see more monsters coming toward them, and Freddy frightenedly says, "Here they come." He hurriedly puts his hands on the ground and uses his magic spell, Magic Gear, which brings out several vines from underneath the ground that wraps around the goblins' necks to trap them. Immediately, Mijil uses his magic equipment to throw fire at the trapped goblins and engulfs them in flames, telling them to eat this. Then Freddy says he's tired, and Mijil nervously says that was dangerous. Freddy apologizes to him as his magic equipment is an area type, so it consumes more magic power than his, but Mijil says well, it's okay, as he has got magic left in him to get them home. Then Freddy says that he also would have preferred an armor type magic gear, but Mijil says it is what it is, and they should go home, as it was a good practice before the witchcraft exam. Hearing about exams, Osamu wonders if they were students, so maybe there's a town just around the corner. But more importantly, he got some important information from observing those two. Things like magic exist in this world. It's constructed by chanting and magic circles, through the magician's imagery, and the consumption of magic power it causes specific physical phenomena. On the other hand, magical equipment varies from person to person. Its ability is determined at birth, and the amount of magical power consumed differs depending on the equipped type and domain type. He believes that apparently the magic circle is a system that floats on its own, and he's not sure what they mean by magical power. But if it's the same as when he activated Absorb Life, maybe he can use magic too. He thinks it's worth a try, and he's going to try making a ball of water to extinguish the burning goblin. But then Osamu thinks no. He wonders what chanting is, if it means spells, as only a fairy tale wizard can be used as a reference. After that, he thinks about imagination. He wonders what specific phenomenon he wants to create, as he wants to tell what magic element is through chanting. Right then, Osamu remembers reading about the properties of water while in the hospital, and thinks he knows the knowledge of what it's composed of. The only thing Takemitsu Osamu had mastered in his days when all he could do was learn, so then he closes his eyes and tries hard to remember it. Ionized covalent bonding of hydrogen and oxygen, enthalpy calculation, parameter assignment of atmospheric pressure, and humidity water liquefaction. He calculates entropy from atmospheric pressure and humidity to compute the state of water, and understands that the water droplets that appear in space are forced into one. Also, the sphere is in its natural state when the interfacial energy between water and air is at a minimum. Then Osamu opens his eyes and gets amazed to find that the magic circle is appearing on its own. After that, the magic circle completes and water starts materializing over it. Osamu finds that water came out, but the shape is not stable. He wonders if this is what they mean by not enough image, so then he tries to remember something close to a water ball. He keeps thinking about imagination and imagery. Osamu tries hard to come up with an image, and right then he remembers. Yes, he plays with souvenirs from the festival. It's called a water yo-yo. Immediately, the water particles combine together and form a ball. Seeing that, Osamu thinks he did it, water ball. He understands that just like in Absorb Life, the energy deep within his body assists and pushes him to do what he does. Then Osamu throws the water ball at the burning goblins. It instantly puts out the fire, and he understands that it requires more magic circles to throw it in a direction. More complex commands require more complex chanting and images. So then he tries to use different types of magic thinking. It's interesting, as if he does more research, it'll be a trump card that can be helpful in the future. 3 months later, some more students come to that place and one says he doesn't really like this place. He nervously asks why they don't just do the implementation training somewhere else. At that, a girl calls him Jazz and tells him he can leave if he's scared. Jazz gets startled by that and nervously says no, he'll follow them, as he'd like to see Alice's newly acquired magic. Alice asks if really, and tells him not to exert himself. Hearing that, Jazz seems relieved. More importantly, she asks if he could use his magic detection to find out if there are any demons nearby, as she wants to test if her ability can be applied to the monster as soon as possible. Jazz says okay and uses his magic detection to search for monsters. Then he says he found it, 50 meters ahead. Humanoid ghost, a high-ranking spirit. Another girl with spectacles seems surprised as she doesn't remember seeing such a thing in this forest. Jazz says now's the time to hunt, as it hasn't noticed them yet. Then Alice says if it were a spirit, an attack using magic power would be effective, so it's perfect for a trial run, as she uses her skill Tangle Ivy and captures the spirit. Seeing that, the girl with spectacles excitedly says, as expected of Alice, and Jazz finds it amazing that Alice can activate a tier 2 magic circle in one try. Then a knife materializes in his hands and he excitedly runs toward the spirit saying, now he'll just have to finish him off with his magical equipment. But right then, the spirit looks at him. Suddenly, Jazz sees an unusual magic circle in front of him, and before he could understand anything, he gets pushed back hard and falls to the ground, which worries his friends. The girl with spectacles wonders what that magic was, as yakai shouldn't be able to use magic. Alice says it's a misdirected magic trick, but it's horribly accurate. Also, she seems frightened, finding it hard to believe that the spirit activated the magic circle without a time lag, as it's not possible for a mere high-ranking spirit to use such perfect magic. Right then the spirit frees himself from the vines and immediately proceeds to attack the girl with spectacles. Seeing that, Alice hurriedly gets in front of her, telling her to watch out. Then the two girls get hit by the spirit's powerful spell, which causes a big explosion, and they fall to the ground, unconscious. After that, Osamu gets close to the students and says he incapacitated them, but this is troublesome, as he has never been attacked by a human before. He looks closely and finds that the two kids before also wore similar clothes as them. The difference was that these guys were hostile toward him, wondering if they were going to kill him. Right then, Jazz lunges at him from behind with his knife in hand, furiously telling him to get away from Alice, and screams. However, Osamu looks at him and tells him if he's going to kill him, then he'd have to do the same, as he uses his absorbed life skill on Jazz. He was wondering, unlike monsters, if there would be someone to take a human life, but he finds that nothing has changed. He doesn't feel anything. Then Jazz tries to lift his hand with the last of his strength, looking at Alice and calling her name, but finds that she's badly wounded and isn't moving at all, so he cries and frustratedly asks why. Seeing that, Osamu gets close to him and tells him in a harsh tone that they tried to kill him. It's their fault, which breaks Jazz, and then he dies as well. After that, Osamu goes up thinking that if a student died, the educational institutions would be in an uproar. It's only a matter of time before they discover it. So he flies off to somewhere else, saying he can't stay in this place anymore, he has to find another place to stay. A few days later, at the Magic Academy, one student asks another if that's for real, the story of a strange body found in a forest in the twilight. A senior student asks what happened, as she thought Alice would have been strong enough. Another student says he guesses she was garbage as well, and it's their fault for entering the forest when they're just weaklings. Meanwhile, at the Academy President's office, the president frustratedly asks why an excellent magician of their school died in that forest inhabited only by mongrels and low-ranking monsters. An older teacher asks another teacher if it isn't his fault for not supervising them properly. The teacher nervously says that they were strong enough, and a third teacher says they should defeat the monster in question first. Then the older teacher suggests contacting the army, but the president says the army is no good if the enemy country is involved, so he tells him to tell the bishop that they may need him. But the third teacher tells him that she thinks immediate countermeasures are needed, as there are students who usually enter that forest for self-studying and training. The president agrees and says the forest is sealed off for the time being, and all access is forbidden until safety is assured. He hopes the available teachers will continue to thoroughly investigate the forest. The older teacher says he understood, while the supervising teacher seems sick and the third teacher helps him. Then the president worriedly says he hopes his bad premonition doesn't come true. At that same time, Mijil, Freddy, and some of their friends secretly hear all of that, and Mijil nervously asks Freddy if they aren't so lucky. After that incident, Osamu moved to the depths of the forest. Then one day he sits beside a tree, sees some other spirits talking about something again. He thinks he spent days absorbing the life of monsters little by little so that their own energy, provisionally called magic power, doesn't run out. Before he knew it, they swarmed around him, occasionally thinking and relying on something. It's only conveyed in fragments, and due to low intelligence, apparently to them he's their kind and a higher being. Osamu understands that, in other words, the idea is that they can avoid threats by staying close to the strong ones. So he wonders something, but then he thinks he guesses he's not human after all. After that, a spirit comes to him and impatiently makes some noises. Hearing that, Osamu asks what the matter is, as it seems it wants to say something. Right then he hears some footsteps. Everyone hides as they see the female teacher and the supervising teacher coming toward them. The female teacher says, "Right here," and the supervising teacher says, "Yes, they're definitely here." Then the supervising teacher whistles using his finger, and immediately all the trees around them get chopped down, which startles Osamu, and the teacher surprisedly questions if it was a high-ranking spirit. The female teacher says that's a lot of magic power for a spirit. They should probably hunt it down, and it looks like it's close to evolving, so they can't overlook the slightest concerns for their pupils' safety. The supervising teacher says, "Exactly, that's what teachers are supposed to do." Then he tells something to go, calling it Pui, which confuses Osamu. The next moment, he notices a weird-looking bird sitting on his shoulder chirping, "Piu," and before he could realize what's happening, the bird tears his arm apart, which shocks him. Osamu finds it hard to believe that his body was taken away in an instant, as the bird flies off with his arm toward the teachers. As it goes up to the supervising teacher, he tells the bird good boy, and the female teacher says that one's more stubborn than she thought. Seeing that, Osamu worriedly wonders if they're messing with his body, and if it's a bird-shaped masquerade, a magical power that's incomparably stronger than the previous trio. So he understands that they're superior than the three before, and they're going to kill them, while the supervising teacher plays with the bird and the female teacher keeps telling him to finish him. Osamu wonders what he should do, as he's not fast enough to suck their life out of them. Even if he wanted to use magic to fight back, a lot has already leaked out of his body. Perhaps one more attack would be his limit. So he thinks that he has to kill them in one fell sweep. He just needs to buy a little time to complete the magic circles, so he needs to find a way to distract them. Right then, the female teacher notices a bunch of huge magic circles popping up around them all at once. She hurriedly asks her colleague what kind of magic he's up to all of a sudden, and the teacher seems confused as he says it's not him. The female teacher asks then who it is. At that moment, the magic circles get even bigger and the female teacher frightenedly says, "Ridiculous, it's too large." The supervising teacher finds it hard to believe, as he says it's bigger than the 10th stage, and wonders if it's a forbidden spell. The female teacher says, "Impossible," as she asks who could activate such great magic, and what the hell that technique is, as she has never seen anything like this in her life as a teacher. Hearing that, Osamu thinks no wonder, as that circle is just a scribble of bullshit. It's just a bluff. He understands that a huge and unknown attack like that had obviously put people on guard against it, so it's enough for a moment to plant the magic of the real thing. Right then, the female teacher tells her colleague to look at his feet, as there's a magic circle, so she questions, then if the one who opened this is just a low-ranked. At that moment, the supervising teacher realizes something. He finds it hard to believe but says, he's the one who killed the students, so he hurriedly sends his Pui at him, telling it to kill him. But it's too late, as right then Osamu does his last finishing touches, and immediately, the teachers along with the bird get blasted by a tremendous explosion. The explosion is so huge that the other teachers of the Magic Institute see it from quite far away, and get terrified. One teacher worriedly says, "That direction is from another unit." Then the older teacher hurriedly tells the others to contact the Institute immediately, and to go find someone who excels in water magic to put out the fire, to which they say yes sir, and get onto it. A while later, after the fire dies down, the area of the explosion is completely burned and becomes barren. Then Osamu thinks, though it turned out differently, but the experiment on explosions in the hospital's courtyard turned out to be very useful. The explosive, picric acid, is higher power and easier to detonate than TNT explosives. It's also easy to synthesize with elements in the air and soil, making it able to be detonated with additional vibrational magic. He understands that the explosion itself is a physical phenomenon. It was a bit of a gamble as to whether it'd affect him or not, but his knowledge is protecting him. Osamu's curiosity keeps him alive. Then he finds that the scattered magical powers are gathering and his spirit body is beginning to recover. Also, the two teachers may have been obliterated by the explosion, and more magical powers are gathering here. But as Osamu's hand completely recovers, he notices something. He wonders what's with these clean clothes, if it means that he has evolved again. He looks back and finds others approaching. He thinks that even though he was able to recover some magical power, he still can't confront a large number of opponents. So he should find another base. So then, Osamu flies up high and looks for other places, but after a while, he finds himself at the capital of Ramza. He looks at the city gate and sees the guards asking people to show their permit who want to enter the capital. Osamu notices that it's the same clothes as those guys just now, so he understands that he'll be in trouble if they see him, and wonders if there's any place where he can settle down. As it starts to get dark, a mother is grieving for her husband with her daughter at the graveyard in the capital. Right then, a guard mage comes and tells them it's time to go home or the undead will come. The mother asks if it's that time already, and says she's sorry. The daughter seems confused to hear about the undead, so the mother explains to her that at night, she'll be eaten by scary monsters, which horrifies her. Seeing that, the guard kneels down and tells the daughter with a smile on his face that the magic core will protect them, so she can go home safely, which amazes her. Then she offers him the flowers in her hands, excitedly saying, "May El Maja be pleased with him," and the guard gladly accepts it, saying, "Blessings to El Maja." After that, the mother and daughter leave. Another mage says, "Well, the undead are low-grade monsters," but a third mage says, "Sometimes there are medium class which are out of league for them C ranks," while the guard thinks of making the flowers into dried flowers. Osamu, hiding behind a gravestone, listens to all that and understands. So this is the country's common graveyard. If there are monsters here, it's a good place to store up some magic. And although there are guards at the entrance and exit of the graveyard, it seems that it's not particularly strict except for the patrol in front of the graveyard. So Osamu thinks, as long as he doesn't make too many unnecessary moves, he can use this place as his new base. However, he realizes that if his arms get blown away like that so easily, then he'll definitely die before long. Right then, he hears some sounds and looks back. Osamu finds that the undead are already here and approaching him, so then he raises his hand and tells them that they all are going to be his food in no time, as he uses life drain on them. A few months later at the capital of Ramza, Anti-Demon Church, class a Holy Knight Zek Baratsudo meets the head bishop, and the bishop apologizes for keeping him busy. Zek says he doesn't mind, as his calls are his top priority, both as a friend and as their position. And he asks what he needs him for. In reply, the bishop says that the divine child princess of Holy Grinia has made a prophecy. She prophesies that there's a disaster that'll occur on this land, and a formal request for an investigation has been issued by Grinia. So he tells Zek to investigate and report if there are any signs of abnormalities, which worries Zek. Then the bishop asks if he remembers what happened in the Dark Forest, as they have been told that 3 mage cadets disappeared when 2 teachers from the Academy of Transfiguration were caught in an explosion. In addition, recently strange things have been happening in the communal cemeteries here in the Kingdom of Ramza. The number of assaults has sharply dropped over the last few months, which confuses Zek. The bishop says that this is his intuition as a servant of God, but he thinks the series of incidents is by no means unrelated. Zek asks if he means it's related to the prophecy, to which the bishop says that's right. So he asks whom he trusts, not as a bishop, but as a friend, if he can help them find out what the unusual situation is in the cemetery. He adds that as a high-rank mage, he'll be able to compete with any contingency. Zek smiles and says he'll accept that mission. That night, the guard from before guides Zek into the cemetery, saying it wouldn't have been a big deal if it was low or mid-rank monster, but they've never had such a sudden decrease in numbers before. He explains that it's probably a spirit, but it seems to be accumulating magical power for some reason, and he'll take the lead as he has already located his whereabouts by detecting its magical power. Zek thinks if it's just a skeleton, a simple blow is all it'll take to wipe it out, but he thinks the series of incidents is by no means unrelated. So he tells the guard with a confident look on his face not to worry, as no matter what happens, his spear will wipe them out. Meanwhile, an undead tries to attack Osamu with its fire magic, but Osamu attacks the undead in return, thinking that the magic circle can be accelerated by adding heat and momentum. Afterward, assign a numerical value to acceleration, and then convert kinetic force to a negative number, as it creates an even bigger fire and hits the undead hard. Then Osamu uses his spatial magic to compress its body and decimate it into pieces, and then uses life drain on it and thinks, so this is the feeling of evolving again. He understands that since he evolved, his magic reserves and the number of times he can perform magic have increased dramatically. After spending so much time here, he has come to believe that the more magic he takes away from them, the more they upgrade his own existence. In the process, he has acquired new abilities. One is magic sensing, by focusing his attention and channeling his magic like a spider's web. This ability allows him to detect a certain presence within a range in proportion to the amount of magic it consumes. Osamu thinks that perhaps the two teachers from before were able to pinpoint his location because they were using this ability. It's a rather brilliant ability, and so if a potentially hostile being or entity were to approach him, he'd be able to locate them by using this ability. But right then, he notices some unusual presence. Osamu worriedly wonders who these guys are as he senses that they've got some serious magic power. He should move, just in case. But right as he moves, he finds that the people are also turning in his direction, so he understands that they're following him. They know where he is. He realizes that he couldn't get away. The guard points at him and tells Zek that there it is. Zek says he said it was an evil spirit, but asks if it isn't a nightmare spirit. A soldier says it must have evolved in the short time it's been here. He adds that it has already become the most powerful spirit in the cemetery. Then Zek materializes his spear saying, well, either way, they're going to take it down. Seeing that, Osamu asks them if they want to kill him too. Zek asks what the nightmare spirit is saying, and the guard explains that they communicate through telekinesis, so they have no way of knowing. Osamu finds that they're dressed differently than the last ones and they're armed, so maybe they're soldiers of this country. He wonders why they keep attacking him when he's just trying to keep his head down. He thinks fine then, he'll have the magic circle ready before they even reach him, as he proceeds to attack them, hoping to try out some of the techniques he has learned. Seeing that, Zek hurriedly tells the others to get back, and they have to brace themselves now, but it's too late as a magic circle already appears below them, as Osamu activates, slashing sky domain. Before they could realize anything, everyone except Zek's body gets cut and separated from the middle, which shocks them. And Osamu irritatedly thinks one left, as he thought he's different from the others, as the other bodies start falling to the ground. He understands that his slashing sky domain is one of the many magical arts he has studied and mastered during his time in the cemetery. If they try to directly apply a magical effect to a creature, the magical atoms that cover its body will interfere with their magic and negate the effect. So Osamu understands, as a first step, they can activate the absorb life at the atomic level to absorb the magic power first, and then they can use it to nullify the effect. And the second step is to break down the molecular bonds and sever the target. But the downside is that it can't be activated if the opponent has too much magic power to take it right away. So it's for weaker targets. In other words, it can be avoided if the body is protected by magic. Osamu realizes that the man who survived had more magic power than him, so it wouldn't work no matter how many times he tried. Meanwhile, Zek stands there shocked, wondering what the hell just happened, as there's no way that a mere demon is capable of deploying magic so quickly. He finds it hard to believe as he wonders how a medium-level nightmare spirit could kill multiple soldiers at once. And moreover, the men he trained shouldn't have been so easily defeated. Then he questions why they're lying on the ground. After that, Zek turns to Osamu and infuriatedly calls him. He raises his spear, shouting at him to hear him, calling him the demon enemy of mankind, and summons countless more spears, furiously telling him that this holy knight, Zek Baratsudo, will have his revenge. Osamu understands that that's a magic weapon, and it's got a lot of magic, so it's probably not a good idea to take any chance with it, as he hurriedly puts up a magic circle in front of him. Zek throws all the spears toward him at once, saying he'll take the fight right to it, and Osamu thinks this is a complex magical formula. It requires concentration, so he can't lose his train of thought. As the spears get close to him, he finishes preparing the magic circle, but the spears start passing right through it and start hitting him. Right then, he activates accelerated magic circle. Immediately, the spears bounce back and head back towards Zek, and before he could realize anything, One pierces right through his head. Zek gets shocked by that and tries to ask how he did it, but before he could finish his sentence, he gets impaled by countless more spears and dies then and there. Osamu tells him that he has a lot of magic in him. If it were a simple contest between the two of them, he'd probably be the one to win. That's why he used acceleration magic to manipulate the vectors and change the spear's point of attack. As if they just changed the direction of flow, there's no conflict between the magic. Osamu adds that the rotation formula, which is both extensive and difficult, took a great deal of attention, but it worked. And for now, he needs to absorb his life and regain his magic, as he uses life drain on Zek. And then suddenly, his clothes change as he evolves again. He finds that the number of holy knights here was quite large, and they had access to a great deal of magical power, more than any of the other evolutions he has had. It's as if his feet have changed from an ethereal form to a tangible one. But then, Osamu releases a sigh and thinks that's nerve-wracking, as he doesn't even have a body to strain, but he guesses that's what happens when they evolve. After that, he says he thinks he'll go deep into the woods and hide himself there in a forest of demons where no one ever comes. The next day, Zek and the other soldiers' dead bodies are taken to the church, and a priest tells the bishop that he suggests he doesn't look at his face. He informs that 2 guards mages, 3 members of the mascot corps, and a knight of the Holy Order were found in the cemetery. The cause of death is very similar to the one in the dark forest, possibly the same killer. So the priest says, may the souls of the holy knight Zek Baratsudo and all the brave mage soldiers return to the throne of gods, as everyone grieves for them. While the bishop frustratedly thinks he should have taken the Holy Grineer prophecy more seriously. Then he thinks, no, repenting now won't bring them back, his friend is no more. After that, he thinks with a determined look on his face that he hates this plague that killed them, and he swears it by El Maguire, that he'll avenge his friend, Zek. After that incident at the graveyard, Osamu wandered deep into the forest for several months, and found himself at the Eldera Forest Monster Village. One day in the village, while 2 goblins were arguing among themselves as usual, an older wise-looking goblin appears before them, which startles them. Then they look to the side and see Osamu approaching with some warrior goblins to his side. Seeing him, the 2 goblins stop arguing and bow before him. The older goblin also shows him respect and welcomes him back, calling him Mr. Shu. He informs him that a human enters near the entrance of the forest and some of the goblins who disobeyed orders were sacrificed. Osamu says he can't help what's already been done and tells him if he sees him in the future, then to tell him to leave, as long as he has a brain that can understand. He tells the High Goblin that at least his orders must be followed, and the High Goblin agrees to do that. Osamu understands that he somehow became the owner of the monsters in this forest. It was a day when he started attacking the monsters again. But it seemed that among them there were strong monsters of a higher rank mixed in with them, Goblin King and high-rank Pig Demon. Osamu found that by defeating the 2 of them, their subordinates took him as their master. He told them that he doesn't mind if they're his subordinates, but he can't do anything. The High Goblin said that he's not asking him to take the lead. Its organizational structure, subordinated to the strong, is critical to survival and prosperity. Osamu wondered if that's what low-level spirits and monsters are like, and decided to accept their offer because there were no disadvantages. As a result, he's currently in charge of a village of monsters. He thinks that surprisingly, there's no problem with magic power and no human interference. It'd be nice if nothing happened and he could live peacefully like this. But right then, he senses something. Osamu gets startled by that and hurriedly turns in that direction. He thinks that he feels a fairly large magical power nearby, and guesses that it's a person. At that time in the forest, a girl is running for her life as fast as she can, as a ferocious werewolf is chasing her. She looks back for a moment and finds the monster still excitedly chasing her, so she worriedly says it's so persistent, and tries to expand her enchantment magic. But as the girl tries to create the magic circle, it fades away in an instant, so she frustratedly asks why it didn't activate. Then on a second thought, she finds the werewolf right in front of her. And before she could realize anything, the monster impales her with his claws right in the chest, causing her to bleed profusely, and the werewolf finds it enjoyable. The girl falls to the ground and feels immeasurable pain, but then the wound quickly recovers and she gets back to how she was before. Seeing that, the monster gets even more excited and starts hurting her even more. The girl keeps screaming, telling him to stop, as it hurts. But the werewolf doesn't stop and keeps hurting her. The girl shouts as loud as she can, screaming, no, and telling him to stop as it hurts. But the monster finds it even more enjoyable. Then he picks her up by her arm like a broken doll, and the girl understands, knowing that the wound will heal instantly. He hurts her and takes pleasure in her pain. The monster breaks her wrist and the girl finds it hurting to even scream. She thinks, what a boring life, having no friends to help her, dying and not being able to escape. She tasted hell on earth. So she cries, saying she wants to get another chance at life. She asks for help, someone to help her, if there is God. At that moment, Osamu shows up there and thinks, bad taste, the werewolf should just kill the girl and get her magical power. He's intelligent, so why not? But then, he thinks that it'll be troublesome if he leaves it and it attacks the village, so he should just kill it. Right then, Osamu looks at the girl's sorry face, deep wounds all over her body, making it hard to see her properly, and notices the face of someone who has given up on their life, who thinks there's no point in struggling now, which reminds him of his own past. Osamu remembers his sister promising she won't let him die, his father asking if he's concerned about the hospitalization fee, as he just hopes he's fine, and her mother saying she's happy to have birthed him. He remembers having a devoted and warm family, but he thought it's his life and he just wants to live. So then, Osamu tells the girl in front of him that she looks like she has a boring life, which surprises her. And right then, Osamu comes down and stomps on the werewolf hard, killing him in an instant, which shocks the girl. After that, she turns to Osamu and confusedly asks who he is, why he helped her, and Osamu looks away saying he didn't save her. He thinks, swallowed by the muddy stream of memories, her despairing eyes, for some reason, it overlapped with his childhood self, as he tells her he just killed it for himself. Then Osamu starts to walk away telling the girl to go back, as it won't hurt her again, and bids her goodbye. But then, the girl requests him to wait. She thanks him for his help and says she's Iris Silverbullet. Then Osamu introduces himself as Shoe Archlight and asks why she's in the forest. Iris replies, to practice collecting herbs, even though it's supplementary. She explains that she's a dropout and in order to avoid repeating a year, she has to supplement her scores. She adds that she was supposed to be gathering medicinal herbs at the entrance of Eldora Forest, but before she knew it, she was in the depths of the forest. And moments later, she was being chased by werewolves, so she couldn't go home. Hearing that, Osamu says he's sorry for her. He lets her know. However, she says she's a dropout, but from the looks of it, he doesn't think she's that way. Hearing that, Iris amazedly says it's a hit with Mr. Shoe. Then she says she's a dropout. It's because she's not good at manipulating magic. Magic is also a basic of basics. Iris explains that she can only use the first order impact of the wind, and even that will fail if he rushes. No matter how much magic she has, a mage who can't use magic has no value. But Osamu asks if she shouldn't learn and acquire it. Iris embarrassedly laughs and says it's impossible because the teacher doesn't like it. Besides, her mage type is an extended type and has no offensive ability, so magic is even more essential. Osamu seems confused about extended type. Iris explains her magic outfit is an immortal ability that embodies herself. The pain doesn't go away, but as long as there's magic, no matter how much damage she takes, she doesn't die and recovers. Also, she never gets old after a certain age. Hearing that, Osamu thinks about the power of immortality, as there are mountains of things that he doesn't know about this world. That's why he avoided dealing with humans, but someday he might need to know, as something comes to his mind. After that, Osamu shows Iris a direction and tells her if she goes this way she should be able to go back. Iris excitedly says she's glad and thanks him. Also she asks where he likes as they should walk home together. But Osamu heads the other way. Seeing that, Iris asks if he isn't coming, and Osamu says no. But right then, a huge plant-like monster shows up out of nowhere and tries to attack them, which startles Iris. She frightenedly says, evil plant tentacle vine. It's a low rank, but they get tangled in the ivy, it's a hassle. Seeing her so scared, Osamu annoyedly asks if she doesn't have any special power, as he immediately creates a magic circle and attacks the monster with his magic saying, it's in the way. At that, the monster instantly gets sliced up into pieces, which shocks Iris. Then Osamu tells her to hurry up and leave, but she stutteringly asks, what happened? What kind of magic is that? She trembles as she points at him and tells him that she has never seen or learned about such a magic circle. Also she asks if it's wind property, and if the magic circle isn't the size of the 6th tier. Then she asks if it's a cyclone, as it should have been a storm wall, but the 6th tier of the wind attribute is. She confusedly asks what, why, and if it's premature development of the technique. Iris desperately asks Osamu who the hell he is. Seeing her ask him like that, Osamu remains standing there silently. but Iris keeps staring at him, waiting for his reply. Then Osamu tries to evade her gaze and tells her it's a secret. Iris gets surprised to hear that, but then she worriedly asks why. Osamu replies she's noisy and tells her to beat it and go home. But then again, she requests him to wait, as she still has some questions and she's not going home until he answers her. Osamu tells her that she has been here for too long, so he's going to send her if she doesn't go. However, Iris still insists on wanting to know who he is, so then Osamu activates a magic circle under her feet. The next moment, she finds herself back in the city, which surprises her, and seeing her suddenly appear, people there start gathering around her. They ask her questions like where she came from and if she's okay, while Iris questions if he sent people long distances with movement magic. She amazedly thinks, what magical power, what advanced technology, advanced magic that even high-class mages can only activate with multiple people, with a technique that doesn't exist. Right then, something comes to her mind and she wonders, what if? Then she impatiently says one more time, she has to see Mr. Shu again. A few days later, at the big city Erdana Mage Academy, as Iris walks inside, others ask if she repeated a year after all, and if it isn't the fault of the mages who can't use magic. They also say that the teacher obviously hated her, and after school she gets bullied by her classmates, as a girl yells at her, telling her to look at her face. She cuts Iris's hair short with a pair of scissors and furiously asks why she's smiling at her failure, as a mage who can't even use magic has no right to be happy, calling her an idiot. That night in Iris's dorm room, she stares out at the night sky, sitting beside her window, and thinks Mr. Shu would never have done this. She recalls him looking at her with marvelous eyes and thinks he didn't insult her. Then she curls up and passes the night. The next day at the Eldera Forest, some goblins hurriedly come up to Osamu and tell him something. Hearing that, Osamu surprisedly asks if they're saying that they can smell a human female nearby, as he says no, he doesn't think so. He tries to brush them off, saying that he thought he said the Lord of the Forest is absolute, so he tells them to just go back to the village. Then he turns to another side and annoyedly asks Iris if she enjoys getting attacked by monsters, as she's entrapped by a plant-like monster, which has tightly wrapped its vines all around her. Immediately, he uses his magic to attack the monster and cuts it into pieces. Iris gets freed and laboredly thanks him, and says as expected. So then he asks why she came here again, and Iris tells him that she came for him. Osamu confusedly asks if she came for him, why? She looks at him and tells him with a determined look on her face that she wants him to teach her magic. She asks the other day if he wasn't using 6th tier magic, as even the teachers of the academy who are D-rank mages can only use magic up to the 4th tier. In other words, he's stronger than the school teachers, so if she learns from him, she should be able to escape from being a dropout. Hearing that, Osamu starts leaving and Iris begs him to wait. She cries and tries to stop him, telling him that she doesn't want to end up unable to do anything. He may be her last hope, so she keeps requesting him. At that, Osamu says he's self-taught to begin with, and he doesn't really know anything, but then suddenly, looking at her face, he remembers about his sister. He irritatedly says memories of his previous life are so troublesome, which confuses Iris. Then he tells her okay, he will teach her. Hearing that, Iris exclaims with joy. However, Osamu tells her that he'll teach her magic, but in exchange, she'll teach him everything about this world, the town, the academy, and the magic that the mages use. Hearing that, she confusedly asks how come he doesn't know anything, even though he can use such amazing magic. Osamu says he told her that his is self-taught. Iris thinks about it and says it's true that magic can be learned by anyone, unlike witchcraft, but then she excitedly says she understood, it's an equivalent exchange, and they should go with that. He thinks that she's not the only one, and this negotiation is good enough for him to live in this world. He believes it has something to do with the fact that he rescued her from the werewolf the other day, and if he interacts with Iris, he may be able to gain some useful knowledge about his former life and this world. At that moment, Iris says, first, they should look at the basics of magic. Magic is basically made up of the 4 elements, the 2 poles. In addition, there are 8 poles of yin and yang respectively. She adds that it's said that the world is made up of 12 elements. And then, by using magic to draw out and interfere with the truths of the world, the act of creating artificial phenomena is called witchcraft. She continues that when the magic circle is completed by chanting, The magic is activated, and Osamu says that he understands. He realizes that whereas he interprets natural phenomena in terms of laws and numbers, these humans seem to understand the world as a concept. Iris says, for example, fire gives warmth. It's also a symbol of destruction. Water heals and nourishes. It can also spoil things. After categorizing nature into 4 major categories, they apply the dual nature to construct magic. So then Osamu asks what a staircase is. Iris explains magic is classified according to the strength and complexity of its power. Lower magic is 1st and 2nd tier, middle magic is 3rd and 4th, higher magic is 5th to 7th, and from the 9th, tactical class magic, a great military magic called Forbidden Spell, so he doesn't have to worry about it. Then Iris tells him it's his turn, and Osamu asks if the lecture time isn't too short. She says that it's an equivalent exchange. Osamu says okay, and asks so what kind of magic she wants to learn. She instantly says Iris. Osamu seems confused by that, but she keeps gesturing that she's Iris. She gets close to him and insists he calls her Iris. Then Osamu finally calls her Iris, and she excitedly says yes, the basics of the wind attribute. The 1st tier of the wind, impact. She wants to learn the magic that throws an invisible blow over a long distance. Then Osamu does all the calculations for the magic in mere seconds and activates the magic. Wind impact. A magic circle instantly gets created and he shoots a power wind attack. He asks Iris if this is the one, and she excitedly says that's it. And being able to shoot without chanting is amazing. So Osamu asks if she knows what he did, and Iris says he gathered the power of the wind and launched it. Then he asks what the wind is, which confuses her. He also asks what the wind is coming out of, which leaves her dumbfounded as she finds nothing to say and gives up. So then Osamu says alright and tells her to give it a try. Then she starts chanting something, trying really hard to activate similar magic, as a magic circle starts to form, but it breaks quickly. Iris seems devastated by that, and then Osamu explains that shock waves are caused by air compression. He applies this to spatial settings and acceleration magic. He also explains that the triggering technique accelerates air molecules in one direction, and the air is compressed so rapidly that a sparse wave is generated, which becomes a shock wave. He tells Iris that her world already has a separate formula to complete magic. If magic power is passed through this, the magic power will be activated. Then why the magic circle doesn't take shape. He gets close to her and asks if that's because she doesn't understand the nature of things. Finding him so close, Iris gets startled. Osamu explains that the content of knowing the nature of things, only the sound is emitted while being vague, so he can't imagine, just as she can read lines from a script loud and clear. But if she doesn't understand the world, the characters, the voice, and the acting, then the play won't work. Hearing all that, Iris realizes that she's not a dropout, she just needs to know how to understand. Osamu tells her that perhaps magic is about understanding the world. Iris seems amazed by that and says such a thing. No one told her before. Osamu explains that chanting should mean more than just words. If they interpret them one by one, they can more or less activate magic, so perhaps, to which she gets confused. He continues that perhaps, for now, they should try to unravel and understand the magic spells and information. But Iris embarrassedly says she couldn't do it at all, she was a failure. Osamu tells her with a smile it's okay, well they should figure it out together. In addition, he gets more information, so he asks Iris if she isn't excited, which amazes her even more. Then she scribbles something on the ground and asks what the word is. She says it's an old word, and Osamu says then these letters are, this is the definition of wind sending shockwaves with circles. Iris cries saying she doesn't know what that means, and Osamu tries to explain it by telling her about the positioning and letters, but right then, he remembers something. In his previous life, he used to ask his father about everything he found in books and learn new. At that, his father laughed and said Osamu is so curious. Hearing that, he used to say that maybe he'll be a scholar in the future as he tells Iris its impact. Immediately, a powerful wind magic bursts out of her hands and flies up into the sky, which astonishes her. Then Osamu says it wasn't powerful enough but it could have been activated, and Iris says that she was able to do magic properly for the first time. She adds that she means he has to understand. No one understood her, and she didn't know anything. She wasn't trying to figure it out. So then, she turns to Osamu and tells him in an ambitious tone that she wants to understand him and magic more, to which Osamu says he too. He thought he was only to gain knowledge that'd help him in life, but when he spends time with her, it's easy to remember who he was in his previous life. He thinks that's not a bad feeling at all, and he's not one to believe in fatalism, but he's willing to let this relationship continue for a little longer. After that, Iris started to learn magic and understand it from him and started to improve. Seeing her improvement, the other students asked when she learned magic. Some started saying that she's just a magic tank, they're sure it's just a coincidence. But if she didn't flatter herself by selling her body to the teacher. After some time, even the teachers started saying that they heard she has mastered 7th tier magic, and the girl has the highest amount of magical energy in her grade. But why she has been buried until now? Everyone praised her, saying how wonderful, and found out that she's the daughter of a great mage. They believe her name is Iris Silverbullet. After some more time, the authority at the Magic Academy tells her that her graduation is confirmed, and from next year, she'll become a holy knight belonging to the demon cult. After that, Iris doesn't waste much time and heads straight to the Eldora Forest. She excitedly tells Osamu that she graduated from the Magic Academy that day. She thanks him with a bright smile on her face for being by her side these past 2 years. She thanks him very much, and Osamu gladly says, well, it's natural. Iris notices that his expression has softened over the past 2 years. Osamu asks if really, as he doesn't know himself, and if so, it must be her influence. Iris confusedly asks by her. He understands that as he interacted with the human Iris on a daily basis and learned little by little about this world, he felt that his emotions were gradually being nurtured. When he was first born into this world, he could only feel nothing but emptiness, and here he is, happy to graduate, so he thinks it's definitely Iris's influence. Then Osamu asks Iris what she's planning to do now that she has graduated. Iris excitedly says, yes, she's going to get a job at the Eldana Church of the Demon Cult and become a holy knight. Hearing that, Osamu gets shocked, and the incident with Zek from years ago comes to his mind. So then, he hurriedly tries to walk away saying, okay, they should stop seeing each other, and goodbye for now. But Iris stutteringly asks why he'd do that, as she doesn't like it at all. He nervously says that holy knights, they hunt demons, to which Iris says yes, that's because demons are absolute evil and the holy knights hunt them down. Hearing that, Osamu surprisedly wonders they've known each other for 2 years, and if she still can't tell that he's a demon, she's supposed to be smart, but she's clumsy in some weird ways. Then Iris tells him, anyway, if she doesn't see him again she'll absolutely hate it, and she's here that day because she wants him to watch the inauguration ceremony, which surprises Osamu. Iris explains that every year in the Cathedral Square, there's an unveiling of the graduates who will become Knights of the Holy Order, and she wanted him to be there to witness the big show with gratitude, as she nervously says that she doesn't have a father or mother, so she has never had anyone witness a ceremony like this, and she has been longing for one. Hearing that, Osamu thinks about it for a bit and releases a sigh. He says, okay fine, he'll go, which makes Iris really excited. Then she tells him in a serious tone that if he breaks this promise she'll come to him herself. Osamu says, yes, yes. Iris brings her face close to his and tells him that absolutely, and also requests him to keep teaching her. He nervously says yes, and Iris repeats, absolutely 100%. After that, she exclaims with joy and excitedly spins around. Osamu seems glad to see her so happy. Then she grabs his hands and excitedly dances around with him. At that, Osamu says she hasn't changed since then. A few days later, Osamu heads to the city. He walks through the city market and finds a lot of people and stalls there, so he asks a merchant if there's a festival that day. He says that the city is so lively that day, and the merchant excitedly says, that's because that day is the inauguration of the new Knights of the Holy Order. He explains that the number of people who will protect them and hunt down the demons will increase, so they have to celebrate grandly that day. The merchant asks Osamu if he doesn't know that, so if he's a traveler. Then Osamu says come to think of it, it was that day, as he thinks that he found out that if he materializes he can blend in with others without being noticed that he's a demon. But then he says he doesn't have any money, which leaves the merchant speechless. While at the church, the archbishop tells the newly appointed knights that demons must be destroyed. He calls them children who have received protection from El Maga and tells them that they've all now become holy knights who will serve this church. Then a rank knight says that the sun will soon rise above them, to be positioned in the right place. Hearing that, the recruits start discussing among themselves. Right then, the bishop calls Iris. He tells her to come to him, which surprises her. Then the bishop says that he remembers her parents, Dahlia and Rose, adding that he was a truly excellent knight. Iris seems amazed to hear him say that. But the bishop says as he recalls they were in the middle of a war, At that, Iris tells him that he died in the line of duty. He was killed by a demon. Hearing that, the bishop touches her shoulder and grievously says he's sorry to hear that, but God is watching them. If she continues to serve God and destroy demons, she will be rewarded, so they must be loyal to the church and kill demons with sincerity. He tells Iris that they're counting on her. Hearing all that, Iris seems speechless. Right then, the ranked officer from before tells everyone it's time. So then the doors of the church get opened and the newly appointed knights walk out to meet the hundreds of townsmen gathered outside to see them. Seeing so many people cheering for them, Iris wide opens her mouth and says, "Wow, that's a lot of people." And another knight says, "It's natural that folks would be happy." As Iris hurriedly shuts her mouth, the knight tells her that there are only a few people who can become holy knights. They need to increase their numbers even if just a little bit, so she should be proud she has been chosen. Hearing that, Iris realizes that as soon as she became a holy knight she has received so many blessings. No more hateful and loathsome behavior. What a joy. So she wonders if she can fight those demons and give her life like her parents, while Osamu stands atop a tree and gazes at her from a distance. Iris senses his presence and realizes that it's him. She hurriedly looks in that direction and finds that it truly is Mr. Shu, so she excitedly thinks he came, while Osamu smiles at her. Iris believes that Mr. Shu led her to this place, to a beautiful sunny place, so she's sure she'll be fine. A few days later, sitting at a restaurant, Osamu points at a line in a novel he got and asks Iris how they read this. Iris says he tried to climb out of the river, but he was unlucky. He got hit by a piece of driftwood and was swept away, but Osamu asks still if she's sure. Even though it's an equal exchange promise, she's spending her precious day off with him for a study session. Iris says of course, it's fine, as she'd rather work hard on her mission day for this. Osamu thinks that after the ceremony, they began to meet each other in the streets. He learned the language and culture of this country Iris is from, and as usual, Iris continues to learn magic. In exchange, lately, she's been complaining about her job. As Iris says, she can talk comfortably with him, so she hopes boys on her team can learn from him. She can't help that her co-workers are all men. But lately, she has been getting a lot of attention from them. She tried to look good and was reckless on her missions, so she got injured, and thanks to that she became good at recovery magic. Osamu says he doesn't see why not, as long as it improves, but Iris irritatedly says, no, it's hard, it's more difficult than he can imagine, to be seen as the opposite gender even though they work together. Osamu says that in other words, it's troublesome. Iris replies that's right, and there's one in particular. This Ymir guy was pestering her day in and day out. But right then, a guy walks up behind her and excitedly greets her. He tells her he never thought he'd see her here. Then he says yes, that's right, it must be fate. Iris gets startled to see him there as it's Ymir, and Osamu thinks, speak of the devil. Then Ymir tells Iris that God must have guided him here, so they should go out to eat. But Iris says nope. Showing Osamu, she asks Ymir if he can't see that she's having lunch with Mr. Shu right now, and she'd never go out to eat with Ymir, which confuses him. He looks at the table and notices that there's food for only one. Then he asks Iris if she's having lunch with a man like this, who stinks of poverty. A beautiful woman like her shouldn't be with him. Ymir also tells her in a creepy tone that she's going to be his partner. She's from the Ballard family, so she shouldn't spoil her dignity. Even though she has a few more years before she gets married, she should realize that now is the time to stop being selfish and do what her husband tells her to do. Ymir continues that she has got a promising future and he needs her to start taking proper nutrition now because she's going to have his baby. It's the husband's duty to take care of his wife. Right then, Osamu shuts his book and tells him that that's harassment, which surprises Ymir. Osamu tells him with an angry look on his face that he doesn't like it, and to get away from here. Ymir finds it hard to believe. Then he furiously tells him not to tell him what to do, calling him a filthy lowlife. And to get the hell out of here, Iris shouts at him not to be rude to Mr. Shu. But Ymir continues that he's an excellent mage of the noble Ballard family and she's a talented, beautiful woman. And outstanding holy knights have children, as leaving strong blood is also a mage's duty. Hearing all that, Iris infuriatedly tells him not to talk anymore, as Mr. Shu is her master and he's much better than him. Ymir annoyedly asks if she's kidding him, if this guy is her master. Then he asks Osamu what family he's from, as if many of the excellent mages aren't from famous families. So he asks which family he's from. Osamu understands that he can't tell him that he's a demon who has inherited knowledge from another world. So he tells Ymir that he has abandoned the house. The knighthood didn't suit his nature. He'd much rather study the truth of magic than fight demons. Hearing that, Ymir laughs and asks if he's a mage, as he tells him that he's just a loser who disobeyed his family and can't make a name for himself as a scholar. Iris frustratedly tells him that's enough, then Ymir leaves saying, "Oops, that's it for that day," and tells Osamu good luck with his research, calling him a loser. After he leaves, Iris can't find herself to meet eyes with Osamu and apologizes to him as she's really ashamed of her colleague. But Osamu tells her that she shouldn't be the one to apologize, and he's not mad so she not to worry about it. Iris tries to say something more, but Osamu shoves food in her mouth to stop her. He tells her with a smile that he knows she's going shopping this afternoon, so they should eat quickly and get rid of the gloom. Hearing that, Iris hurriedly pushes the food inside her mouth and finishes it up, then she exclaims with excitement. As she says, "Yai." She gets up and says, "Alright, they should eat," and requests him to eat his rice too, as he always says he doesn't eat. She's the only one who eats every time, so she insists him to eat just a little bit. But Osamu tells her not to worry about it, while Ymir eavesdrops on their conversation from a distance. As the sun starts setting, Osamu returns back to the Eldora forest saying, he didn't think women's shopping would take so long and he somehow made it back before sunset. Right then, he activates a magic circle and shoots at a tree in front of him in an instant. He looks furious as he hits someone invisible. Osamu tells the person that he has been following them for a long time and points out his invisibility magic. Then the person removes his helmet and disables his invincibility. He acts surprised and tells Osamu that he's quite good, seeing through his cloak of magic. Ymir reveals his face and says, or more precisely, a magical device with invisibility, calling Osamu a worthless shit. Seeing that, Osamu says he didn't know they had such a thing. Then Ymir tells him that he knew all along he's not a magician and asks if he's even a human. Osamu asks why he thinks so, and Ymir explains that everlasting darkness is the domain of demons. No one goes near the forest at night. Being in high rank holy knight is not enough, but a mere mage going into the forest at night alone is not different than committing suicide. Ymir also says that when he was at the cafe with Iris, he was the only one who didn't order any food. Why? Because demons don't eat human food, which worries Osamu. Then he reveals his true form and Ymir excitedly says, a monster that reveals itself, so he doesn't deserve her anymore. As he rushes at Osamu and swings his arms, sending out a powerful slash which Osamu barely manages to dodge. He realizes that he's given the sword invincibility and wonders if it's possible to partially apply. Osamu understands that he doesn't seem to be trying to hide their hostility, then he has no choice but to fight. But he also wonders if Iris will be in trouble if this guy is gone, if she'll feel sad. If so, then he'll have to avoid killing him. That's why Osamu tells Ymir that he knows he works with Iris, so he's going to let him off the hook right now. But Ymir disgustedly asks if he's pretending to be a human by showing mercy, as he'll get rid of the bugs on her anyway. He'll kill him right here in the name of Altmaja. As he furiously swings his sword at him again, and immediately Osamu blocks the attack with his magic. Ymir gets shocked to see that there's no chant, no time activation. He says that's stupid as it's not an easy feat even for an S-rank holy knight. Then Osamu says that it's a reflex spell that reverses the momentum of the body to reflect the damage from the enhanced strength. And apparently, he's capable in his own way too. It seems to be true that he's an excellent knight, while Ymir's hands bleed because of the rebound. And he remains standing there speechless. Then Osamu tells him with a smug look on his face that he can't kill him, because he's weaker than him. Hearing that, Ymir gets infuriated, and the only thing that comes to his mind is that he has to kill him. So he lunges at him with all his might and furiously starts swinging his sword at him, telling him to die, to get out of his way. As Iris loves him, he's the one that deserves her. Osamu keeps deflecting his attacks, which severely hurts Ymir, but he frustratedly keeps attacking, saying that that woman is his slave. She's a strong mage, so he'll impregnate her and bring more prosperity to the Ballard family. Fate has already been decided. Hearing all that, Osamu's eyes start burning with rage. Then Iris's playful and innocent face flashes before his eyes for a moment, and he activates his attack, Magic Formation, Cut Over Area. The next moment, Ymir gets shocked to find his head and hands cut clean right off his body and fall to the ground. Osamu towers over him and tells him in his last moments that, to pretend to be a human, he's a better actor than him. Then he thinks that if the Holy Knight dies in the Eldora Forest, he'll be in trouble, so he activates his movement magic and teleports his body somewhere else. A few days later, as Osamu goes to meet Iris like usual, Iris tells him with a grim look on her face that Ymir is dead, just outside the city walls. He acts surprised and asks if he was killed by a demon. Iris says no. The fact that there were signs of being cut by a very sharp blade suggests that it was probably done by a mage. She adds that his colleagues were the first to be suspected and she was shown Ymir's corpse, but she frustratedly looks at him and tells him that cut, she remembers seeing it. Hearing that, Osamu remains calm and asks, but if the culprit is a mage? Iris seems conflicted as she feels a bit glad and tells him, yes, the culprit is a mage. Right then, it starts raining and Iris says, it's a very dangerous world they live in, but personally somehow it helped. Osamu asks if she helped him, and Iris nervously says, yes, well, she's finally getting some normality in her work. Right then, Osamu remembers something and tells her about it. Sometime later in another country, a princess looks out at the night sky and says that a wicked star shines in the south. Then her body starts glowing. Seeing that, a handmaiden amazedly says, the princess is so beautiful when she's using magic, and another handmaiden tells her to be quiet as she's in the middle of an oracle. After that, the princess says healing greenery spreads out below as she finds herself in another dimension. She finds that there are two gates, one is an orderly wooden door and one is a flesh and blood door of resentment. The princess nervously proceeds to open the door of resentment thinking a man can pass through either gate. But as soon as she opens the door, a creepy skeleton peeks out and tells her that the day of choice is near. Immediately, the princess falls to the ground and her handmaidens hurriedly go up to her, worriedly calling her Lady Kimiko. After that, a meeting is called by the king, where he tells the others to listen carefully as all of them are about to see the future Princess Kimiko predicted. This is probably about the king of the demons. Others get shocked to hear about the demon king and ask if it's that disaster level class superior being, as they find it hard to believe. The king explains that Princess Kimiko's prophecy is unclear, however. It's said that a prophecy of a wicked star was also made when the immortal King Zenon was born in the imperial capital territory. Therefore, there's a strong possibility that a new demon king will be born. Then one says they must do something about this quickly. And another says, a place of healing greenery, it must be Eldora Forest. So then the king gives the order to send out a messenger immediately, and send reinforcements to Eldora Forest, as they the Grinia nation must not fall behind. Immediately one says that he'll take care of it from here on. But hearing that, another furiously asks what he's saying. If he's saying he wants all the credit for this, as a quarrel erupts amongst them. The king finds it concerning. Then he lays back and thinks about the two gates of choice, as they must open the right door. A few days later at the Eldora Forest Monster Village, the goblins and the pig demons are busy with different human-like chores and getting on with their daily life. Osamu sits there and understands that in the past 5 years, it has become a rather decent community. Goblins, orcs, and demon pigs have accumulated magical power and intelligence, and their ego and individuality have sprouted. Also, he's now able to communicate easily with some of the powerful demons such as the monster kings and high-ranking pigs. Osamu thinks, master of the demons, it was a position he was given by chance, but it was only a formality. He smiles as he finds that it wasn't as bad as it seemed and believes that this feeling must be attachment. Right then, the Goblin King comes and tells Osamu that he has a report for him. The ones that were on the hunt encountered humans and more than half of them were killed. Osamu hurriedly gets up and asks if they went to the forest entrance again and get killed. The Goblin King explains that the hunting grounds are deep in the forest near the village, which worries Osamu. He wonders if mages came all the way here. Why? Even though people haven't entered deep in the forest for the past few years, moreover they can wipe out evolved demons. Osamu concludes that they're holy knights. He doesn't know what triggered it, but if it was the start of a demon subjugation, that's pretty bad. The village was not built on the premise that it'd be attacked. So he tells the Goblin King to hurry up and tells them to spin a strong yarn, and they need as much rope as they can get. The Goblin King asks why, and Osamu says he's going to set a trap. It's a rush job, but it's better than doing nothing, as he thinks that he's developing a new magic, but he wonders if he can manage it somehow. Osamu also wonders what if they're real magic knights and what if Iris is among them. Then he thinks no, she said she's been chasing drug trafficking organizations the other day, so he doesn't have to worry about running into her, and after that, he proceeds to set up the traps. Meanwhile, at the church, a priestess briefs the holy knights that according to the scouts, the demons that inhabited the forest's interior were all of medium to high rank class. They even found what they thought was their settlement, but in the inhospitable forests of Eldora, it's unusual to find such a large population of high-ranking demons. The priestess adds that, according to magic detection, The number is roughly 200 to 300, and since a lot of them have gathered in one place, they assume they're following a higher being. Hearing that, a knight checks another report and says, yes, the nest is growing. There was a similar report in King's Land once. The archbishop explains that most demons create bosses to keep them in line. The high-rank pig demon and orc would most likely be the candidates. Then the priestess asks if it's different this time. The bishop says he predicts this boss is the king of the wicked star, the sign of Princess Kamiko's prophecy. A knight says, it's said if this demon is born it can destroy 1 or 2 countries, a rare demon. Then the bishop says, according to the prophecy, its existence has not yet fully awakened. So whatever seeds of potential there may be, they must crush them now. He tells the holy knights of the church to handle it quickly, as if they make the wrong choice, their country will perish, and all those whose names are about to be called will join the strike force. They'll proceed immediately to the depths of the Eldora forest. It'll take several days before the reinforcements from Sacred Grinia arrive, and before they do, they'll have to cut off the demon's influence. The bishop adds that he trusts they'll get the job done as the priestess starts calling the names of the members of the strike force, while others wonder if they aren't all the same outstanding lineup. So they understand that the archbishop wants to get the credit before the reinforcements. Then the priestess says lastly, Lady Iris Silverbullet. A high-ranked holy knight looks at Iris and says, with her here who is an expert in magic there'll be a match for hundreds, and Iris nervously bows at him. The priestess tells her that she'll put someone else in charge of investigating the drugs, and she can concentrate on defeating the demons. And those who weren't called should strengthen domestic security. Then she says, may they all be blessed, as Iris seems ready to carry out her mission. After that, she thinks it's been 3 years since she became a holy knight, and this is her first big subjugation battle. Same duties as her father and mother, so she'll do her best. Suddenly, one of her colleagues grabs her and excitedly tells her that she knows she's probably nervous, but the vanguard will do their best, so she should take it easy. She also tells her that they'll leave in less than an hour, so to take everything she needs. Hearing that, Iris realizes that she has to go now. She wishes she could have said a few words to Mr. Shu, as she doesn't know if she'll make it home before the next vacation. Meanwhile, at the Eldora forest, Osamu explains to the demons that they'll string a thread through the trees and hang things from it. The enemy will come from the direction of the sound. That's how they'll know if there's an intruder, but he says not to expect too much success, as the enemy has the power to wipe them out. So Osamu tells everyone not to let their guard down. Also, he'll leave here for a while to learn magic. He tells the Goblin King to take care of the village while he's gone, which surprises the Goblin King. Then he bows before him, indicating that he's ready to take charge. After that, Osamu heads out to learn magic and thinks, if the Holy Knights have made it into the middle of the forest, there won't be much time left before they make their next move. He understands that if the new magic circle is completed in time, it'll be of great help in protecting the village. However, as Osamu rushes to finish learning the magic, he finds that the magic circle is getting all jumbled and corrupted. So he sadly thinks it's not working at all. He doesn't have enough time, and most importantly, not enough magic power to build it by far. What Osamu is trying to do is utilize the inner and outer processes of magic circles to learn to release them in tandem with the sorcerer in a materialized state, to conserve magic and maximize power. So he experimented with making the magic circle more compact to minimize deployment range and energy consumption, which is quite difficult. Then generate a number of surgical modules as a planar surgical circuit, stack them, and connect them with a vertical surgical circuit. The vertical circuit is a button for activating a set of techniques, and a horizontal circuit is a program that contains the contents of a technique. Osamu believes that the main routine is compressed and incorporated with the magic content, and by calling in a subroutine and processing conditions as needed, it allows for the reuse of formulas. He'd like to build a magic circle inside a vertical magic circle, but it's not attractive enough, so the contents are overflowing and the formula is inverted, which is the current issue. Also, the structure can be envisioned but not completed in time. The way of construction and output is so different from the conventional one that it's hard to give it proper form. Osamu understands that it's a lack of imagination and magic power, and as it is now, everything isn't enough. He has to get stronger to protect them. But then, he thinks he can't believe he subconsciously thought he had to protect that place. Osamu smiles and says, it must be attachment. He has changed a lot since he has been here, either that or Right then, he hears a loud explosion from within the forest. He worriedly looks in that direction as he understands that that's the direction where the demons were. Going back a bit at one point, a goblin warrior goes up to the Goblin King and asks where Mr. Shu is. The Goblin King says that he's by the creek as usual, so he doesn't let them get caught up in the aftermath of his magical development. The Goblin warriors find it amazing. One says that the king is industrious when he's already more than strong enough, but he didn't realize he was trying to gain more power. The Goblin King smiles and says he's a strong man. Right then, the things attached to the strings and ropes which were set up to alert them of intruders start clanging. The goblins understand that the traps are working and hurriedly tell the others that enemies are coming from the direction of the sound. So the demon warriors all start rushing in that direction with their weapons in hand, telling their enemies that they'll kill them, calling them sons of dogs. But then, they get confused to find that there's no sign of life there. The next moment, one goblin notices something and tells the others that there's some noise coming from behind them. However, before they could look back, a powerful holy knight rushes at them and swings his bastard sword in an instant, slicing off their heads and killing them. The demons get shocked to see that, and the holy knight looks at them with pure killing intent in his eyes. He tells them that they have the intelligence to set traps, but don't have the intelligence to think ahead. This string can detect enemies, but if they follow it, it'll take them to their lair. He mockingly tells them that they just saved him the trouble of looking for them, calling them demons. Then the other holy knights start showing up, and Iris is also among them. All warrior demons of Eldora Forest find themselves surrounded by terrifying holy knights as the powerful holy knight says, "The battle of annihilation will now begin." The captain of the strike force briefed everyone, showing a map, that this is the deepest part of the Eldora Forest and the lair of high-ranking demons. They're going to destroy it and kill their king. They'll form a team of 5, with a vanguard and a rear guard, and surround the village, and when he gives the signal to attack, they'll move in at once. Iris got thoughtful hearing about the deepest part of Eldora Forest. After that, they all set out as the captain told everyone to purge the wicked demons, and may they all be blessed and achieve victory. Now as they enter the monster village, he tells his comrades that they should get to work. Right then, the goblins, demons, pigs, and orcs all come furiously rushing at them. But the captain slices them down with his sword in the blink of an eye. The other holy knights also wreak havoc in the small village with their powerful equipment and magic. The young holy knight uses his thorn magic to bring out thorny vines from his arms and uses it to trap 2 baby pigs and their mother. After that, the kid hurriedly calls his friend Kyle as he uses submerge magic. It creates a dark shadow below the pigs which terrifies the babies, and the mother's cries holding them tightly. Then shadowy hands start emerging from there. They grab hold of the demon pigs and drag them into the shadow until nothing remains of them. Seeing that, the 2 holy knights get really excited, and the younger holy knight says, yeah, they're the strongest. He tells Kyle that he was afraid of the prophecy and prepared himself to see what it'd be like, but they're totally weak. The demons aren't much of a problem, so if they newbies wouldn't be able to handle them. The kid excitedly adds that he's going to join his seniors in another unit and he's going to play a big role, and Iris Senpai is going to praise him for being so great. Such a future is not impossible. But right then, the ground breaks underneath his feet and he falls into a deep hole. The kid gets shocked to realize that it's a trap, and Kyle asks if he's okay. The young knight finds it hurting and asks why they dug like this, as he read in the text that middle-class demons and lower-class demons don't have intelligence. His friend tells him if he's not hurt, then to get up and come on, hurry, as it's dangerous to be in the enemy's trap. But right then, the younger knight hears a weird sound and worriedly calls his name. A moment later, he sees a goblin looking at him straight in the face from outside the hole, and the young holy knight nervously says, "Hello." The goblin remembers Osamu telling them that this pit has a concealment magic, so when the prey falls into the hole, to take them out immediately in one go while they've got their guard down, and to give him a good blow, a hard one, as the goblin raises his axe and jumps inside the hole to hit the knight with all his strength, and the knight frighteningly closes his eyes. But then, he sees a sword shoved right through the goblin's head and gets surprised to find that it's Senior Rubelius. He managed to slay the goblin at the last moment. Rubelius looks at him with a smile on his face and tells him to never let his guard down, calling him a rookie. He then helps him get up, telling him that textbooks and the field are not the same thing. After that, they get out of the hole and Kyle seems really glad to see him. The young knight surprisedly says, "So he was alive," and Kyle says that's his line, as if it weren't for seniors they'd be dead. Then another senior tells them that they'll take care of the rest of this area, so they should go and join the troops to the south. And a third knight adds, while they're at it, to have Iris look at their injuries. The two rookies seem amazed to see them in action. Then they excitedly start heading south. After that, a senior says, well, it looks like they're going to finish this early. His colleague says yes, but they have yet to discover their king. They've only seen little pig demons and goblins so far. Right then he gets surprised as he points his finger toward the forest and stutteringly says, someone's here. He finds it hard to believe, so he asks who that is. As Osamu reaches the village, he looks around and finds most of the goblins, demon pigs, and orcs, the people he cared about, dead. Seeing that, he gets infuriated. Then the knights hurriedly walk up to him as one tells him that this place is dangerous and requests him to evacuate immediately. But another knight asks, the forest is off limits, so how he even got here in the first place, what he's doing here. Right then, Osamu furiously tells them to die as he raises his hand and instantly uses his magic, domain cut. On the two knights, Rubelius gets surprised to see the immediate activation. But before he could do anything, the two knights' heads get cut clean from their necks and fall to the ground. Rubelius gets shocked to see that. He shouts at Osamu that they're the Holy Knights of Eldra. They've been sent here to destroy demons, and they have no intention of harming humans, so he tells him to put down his hand. Osamu asks if he's thinking of him as a human, and then he realizes that he didn't even have time to undo the materialization. After that, Rubelius frustratedly says, no, he has already killed two knights, so he'll not forgive this wickedness, as he picks up his sword and starts charging it up with his magic energy. Hearing that, Osamu furiously tells him that, well, they are the ones who ruined his place, and he'll not tolerate this barbarism, as he instantly activates his gravity magic and uses it on Rubelius to forcefully pin him to the ground. Rubelius immediately gets on his knees and finds that his body keeps getting heavier. So he uses his magic physical strengthening on his body, and then he lifts his sword up and pushes into the ground with an immense force, which instantly breaks the magic circles beneath his feet. Osamu understands that he's strong. He easily broke his magic circle, so he's as strong as him or maybe stronger than him. Rubelius also understands that Osamu is strong, so he wonders if he's an enemy from another country. Then he thinks no, in the first place this magic circle is not right. This magic formula doesn't exist in any country. After that, Rubelius shouts at Osamu that he'll defeat him and make him regret harming them, the Order of the Holy Knights, as he rushes at him and swings his sword at him with all his might. Osamu gets startled by that and hurriedly tries to move out of the way, but realizes it's no use, so he tries to teleport from there. However, Rubelius sees through that as he furiously asks if he's using teleportation. But he won't let him get away. The next moment, Osamu finds Rubelius's sword on his shoulder, and his arm gets cut off. Rubelius irritatedly says he missed his heart, but he managed to cut off his shoulder. But then, he worriedly asks what that is, as he sees that Osamu's arm is growing back, and then he lets go of his materialization, so he understands that he's a spirit demon. Moreover, a spirit demon that can materialize. Osamu says he's smart, and Rubelius says, well, that's convenient, now he can kill him without hesitation. As he brings up his sword again and activates his magic, White Lightning. Seeing that, Osamu gets worried. He understands that white lightning converges on the sword with an incredible amount of magical power, so if he gets hit again his whole body will be blown away. Osamu desperately wonders what he should do. Absorb life is useless because the opponent has higher magical power than him, and there's no chance to counterattack, as all he can do is run away. But then Osamu thinks he has to distract Rubelius just for a moment, as he brings out a vial with some kind of liquid and throws it toward him. As soon as the vial gets close to Rubelius, it rapidly absorbs all the thunder coming out of his sword and explodes. As the dust starts settling, Rubelius finds that the left part of his face and his ears are badly injured. He frustratedly asks what the hell that was, while Osamu thinks the explosives created an opening. Then he uses his magic, domain cut on him, but Rubelius plants his sword into the ground and releases his own magic power to counter it. Osamu finds it hard to believe and Rubelius says, this is a strange magic. The moment it unfolds, there's a 1/10 of a second time lag. If that's the case, then they can prevent the vital blow before it's triggered by strengthening their body, but due to foreseen circumstances, he couldn't cope with it. So then he keeps gathering magic power and tells Osamu in a loud voice that his name is Rubelius Round, a holy knight of Eldra, and he cannot be defeated by a mere spirit. While Osamu wonders if he's going to lose, if he'll die here, but then he thinks that's right, he'll never forgive them. They've unreasonably attacked their village. So he keeps thinking of the way to fight back, and how to stay alive, but then he realizes something about the location and thinks, yes, that's right. Rubelius prepares to attack him, telling him that there won't be a next time. he'll use all his magical power to kill them all in one fell swoop. But right then, Osamu raises his hand and a small magic circle pops under Rubelius's feet. He gets surprised by that but easily steps away from there. So he laughs and asks if he isn't getting desperate, as even a little kid could dance his way out of this cheap magic, so he's sure he has reached his limit and he's wasting his time. After that, he raises his sword telling Osamu that unfortunately, the magic charge is complete, and he'll make him perish in one blow. However, Osamu senses something near Rubelius's feet where he's standing and says here's another one, last dance. Rubelius notices another magic circle showing up under his feet on the ground, so he hurriedly moves away again and furiously tells him that this is the end, calling him a stupid monster. But right then where he stands, the ground breaks, and instantly he falls into a deep hole, nowhere to be seen. The next moment, Rubelius's magic energy bursts into a powerful energy beam and rises out of the hole with tremendous power. Osamu thinks that's a lot of magic power. That was a close call, and he's glad he dug those holes with everyone, while Rubelius disintegrates in his own magic power. After that, he hears someone calling him Shu-sama. He hurriedly looks back and finds that it's a goblin who's barely hanging onto his life, so he hurriedly runs toward him. The goblin cries and tells him he's sorry, he couldn't kill those humans. He couldn't protect the village, so he keeps apologizing. Osamu sadly lifts him up in his arms, and then the goblin requests him to absorb his magic. Although it's just a fraction of what it used to be, he'd be happy if he could be with him. He adds that he can think like this because of him, so he thanks him, calling him their king. So then, Osamu uses absorb life on the goblin and absorbs his life essence into him. After that, he gets on his feet and looks up at the sky. He touches his head thinking about all the chaos the Holy Knights caused that day, and says he'll kill them all. Meanwhile, the captain of the strike force keeps dozing sitting on top of a pile of monsters he killed, so one of his colleagues tries to wake him up calling him Zamus. She tells him that the goblins left by the Demon King are still out there struggling. There's no problem with the strength, but there are too many of them. After that, Zamus gets down saying they should hang in there a little more, as he's sure reinforcements will be here soon. His colleague surprisedly asks if they're coming. Zamus says it's a disaster class individual. He's talking about the King of Evil Stars. These pigs have a freakishly high intellect, so he's convinced there's a disaster class demon leading them. Hearing that, his colleague says, well, then they'll just keep on hunting those small fry, and he might show up to avenge his men. Zamus smiles and says he's looking forward to it. Then he leaves that place telling his colleague that he'll leave the cleaning up to her then, and she burns the monsters with her fire magic. Meanwhile, at another part of the monster village, the Goblin King along with quite a number of demons stands face to face with a few powerful knights. A younger knight annoyedly says they're so stubborn it's disgusting, as he says he's using 5th tier of wind magic, Wind Blade, which moves toward the demons with tremendous speed and force. At the last moment, a goblin comes forward and takes the hit all by himself. His body gets cut right in the middle and he lies there dead. The Goblin King seems saddened to see that. The kid sounds surprised as he says it became a shield for them and wonders if goblins ever had a sense of camaraderie. Right then, Zamus arrives there with the Lady Knight and tells the others to switch to ranged magic, as he'll take the vanguard, he'll reap what he can, and the others seem amazed to see him there. At that moment, the Goblin King seems really worried and the other demons frightenedly keep telling him that that one is a formidable opponent. They don't stand a chance against him. However, the Goblin King remembers Osamu telling him before leaving to take care of the village while he's gone, as he's counting on him, so the Goblin King closes his eyes hoping for the best. Then suddenly, Zamus takes up his sword and rushes at them in full force, while the kid says this is it and proceeds to use the 4th floor of flames. But right then, Osamu shows up out of nowhere and places his hands on 2 of the knights, and a big magic circle materializes below their feet, which shocks them. A magic circle also shows up below the 3rd Holy Knight's feet, and before they could react or think of what to do, he tells them with a furious look on his face to die. The next moment, the bodies of the 3 knights start tearing up in half from their heads. Immediately Zamus looks back, but it's too late. Then in the blink of an eye, Osamu gets close to him and tells him to blow up, as he puts his hand on Zamus's back and a magic circle shows up. Immediately, Zamus's body starts deforming and small explosions start happening in different parts. Then his body breaks up into pieces and falls to the ground. Osamu understands that vibration magic amplified the shock and ruptured his body from the inside out. He wouldn't have stood a chance fighting head-on, as he has an unusual amount of magic power. But then, some kind of liquid keeps flowing from Zamis's body, so Osamu wonders if that's blood, as something is not right. After that, the liquid from different parts of his body gathers together and forms a huge twister of water, which startles Osamu and forces him to move back. He worriedly asks if that's a water vortex, then Zamis laughs and tells him that blowing him up with the explosion magic was a good decision, it was just a bad matchup. As all the water reforms his body into how it was, and he says he has always thought that a body of water is versatile. Then he furiously tells Osamu that he killed his friends, so he's going to pay for that, while Osamu thinks he turned from a whirlpool of water to a human form. He remembers Iris telling him that there are many types of magical costumes, for example, using beasts to create armor that only affects her, and an armor that transforms itself into a shape-shifting magical device. So then, Osamu tells the Goblin King that he'll hold them off. He has to take everyone and run. The Goblin King seems hesitant to leave him alone, but Osamu looks at him and insists him to run away. Seeing that, Zamis tells Osamu that he must be the boss of this village, as he readies his sword, and Osamu thinks, well, maybe a little, but they're all going into the forest. But then he finds the Goblin King still there. He tells Osamu to forgive him, as he failed to follow his orders, but he asks him to at least let him stay by his side. However, the next moment, they find Zamis rushing in at them at lightning speed and cutting off the Goblin King's body in one fell swing. At that moment, Iris, who's in another part of the monster village, looks in that direction as she senses something. But right then, a goblin rushes at her face and tries to hit her from behind, so she hurriedly turns back and hits him with her thunderbolt magic, saying, "This is it." Immediately, a powerful lightning falls on the goblin and turns him into a crisp. Seeing that, she seems really excited and someone says, as expected of her. Iris looks back and finds a senior of hers telling her that not only is she one of the top young magicians in the world, he can't believe that she's also good at lightning magic. Iris says no, they all do well because they're following seniors' footsteps, so they should all fight together. Then she goes on explaining several things about how victory is all about comrades fighting together, and seeing her so enthusiastic, her senior pats her on the head telling her, "Good kid." And now that they're all done here, it's time to regroup with the other unit. Right then, he notices a flare being shot and says it's up. They got the signal just in time. That's a report of a kill on the Alpha. Then they meet up with the other knights in the area, and the kid from before excitedly requests Iris to treat him right away, while the senior that was with Iris asks another knight if Rubelius isn't with them. The knight says that they're going to join up later with the rest of the party. The senior knight says he understands. In that case, it's fine. After that, they all start moving in the direction the signal came from, leaving the dead demon carcasses there as food for insects, as the kid keeps gossiping with Iris. But he says, still, it's a leader that can increase the organizational strength of demons. So he questions what kind of monster this is, as if it isn't very rare to get a disaster class. A senior knight explains that this time, it's not just a disaster. The boss of the demons has a very unusual habit, so he wonders if even their high-rank holy knights can beat it. Right then, another knight irritatedly tells him not to make his junior's anxiety worse. However, Iris gets thoughtful. She remembers a priest from the church asking her when she was little if she is an Iris Silverbullet. He straightforwardly told her that her parents were killed in the battle to take down the disaster class. In other words, they're dead. He added that before they died, they faced each other and lost, so Iris thinks she knows it's a different kind of demon, but to her, it's revenge for killing her parents. She also thinks she's sure the captain took them down that day, but she decides with a serious look on her face that someday, she will too. After a while, the knights reach the place where Zamis sent the signal from and find a wooden board placed there beside him. He sees them and says they're late. The kid finds someone restrained by him, so he excitedly asks if that's the disaster class and where the others are. Zamis says yes. He tied him up with his magic armor, but he warns not to get too close as he killed the others. Iris, who's standing at the back, looks around and finds a wooden board brutally shoved through a goblin's body and placed upright. She thinks it's a skewer as expected of the captain. Then she desperately tries to look through the knights standing in front of her, as she can't see that disaster class, so she moves to the side and gets stunned. She finds someone restrained by water coming out of Zamis's magic armor. He seems very familiar to her, so Iris worriedly asks what. Then the demon raises his head and looks at her, and Iris gets shocked to see that it's Osamu, so she hurriedly goes up to him, confusedly calling him Shu-san. One day, Iris woke up and found herself sleeping on a grassy field, facing the sky, and then she hastily woke up. Seeing that, Osamu wished her a good morning and told her that she slept well, but he thinks she has been studying too hard. After that, Iris first pinched his cheek and then pinched her own, which startled Osamu. She found it hurting and said it's real. Then she laughed, saying she's sorry, she's just so happy and peaceful. She thinks it was like a dream. Now seeing Osamu entrapped, she worriedly asks what he's doing here. No, first of all, why the captain captured him. Iris says that they have come to defeat the king of the evil stars and the demons that follow him. So she tells him to come on now, as it's not safe here, he needs to get to the city. The other holy knights present there seem shocked to see her talk to Osamu like that, and the kid worriedly says, "What the?" It's like she knows that demon. Right then, Iris's senior grabs her arm and tries to pull her back, telling her to get away from him. She says that he'd urge her to refrain from doing any rash actions, as even though they're restrained, they're still a powerful demon. What if it attacks her? However, Iris tells her with a serious look on her face that it's alright, Mr. Shu would never attack her. The senior knight gets surprised by that. Then she frustratedly asks if she understands what she's saying. Then Team Captain Zamis asks Osamu if they know each other. Osamu thinks, yes, he knows her. However, he understands the disgust others will feel toward Iris if he says that. They'd find it hard to believe and question if she isn't a target to take down, as being friendly with a demon is a betrayal. They'd think of her as a monster as well. So Osamu decides that he can't say that, and says with a smile, no way, he doesn't know her. He even asks how can humans and demons be friends. Iris seems shocked to hear that, but Osamu hopes that she pretends she doesn't know him. He understands that the current situation is overwhelmingly disadvantageous for them. The domain cutting skill, which is a deadly magic, is useless against this water ability. And the life sucking doesn't work either in the face of immense magical power, so as the difference in experience is overwhelming. He's at his wit's end. He believes that for now, he should prioritize her safety and lie a little to make her life easier. Then Zamis starts laughing and asks if that isn't right, as that's a relief. There's no way a holy knight is acquainted with a demon who killed their comrades. Hearing that, the other knights get worried, as they understand that Osamu is a holy knight slayer. Besides the 3 dead ones, there might have been others who got caught by his magic. The kid also finds it hard to believe as realizes that Rebellious and his team have been killed by him. Zamis says demons are an absolute evil to them humans and they must destroy them. A holy knight becoming friends with a demon is a high treason and they'll be punished. So he asks Iris, just to make sure he's not missing anything, if she and this guy know each other. Osamu frustratedly says that he just told him he doesn't know her, but Zamis shoves water from his magic armor into his mouth, telling him to shut the hell up. Then he looks at Iris and tells her with a creepy look on his face that he's asking her. The senior holding Iris's hand looks really worried, but Iris says he is her master. He's the one who's been teaching her magic for the past 5 years. If it weren't for him, she wouldn't be here right now. She would never have become a mage, let alone a knight. Iris tells Osamu that she's indebted to him, so she cannot fake this feeling this time. And then she frees her hands from her senior. Her senior tries to tell her that maybe she's making a mistake, and Zamis annoyedly asks if she didn't know his true identity is a demon. Iris nervously says no, she just found that out. But then she says, no, really the truth is she just didn't want to find out. Hearing that, Zamis tells her too bad, as he always believed she was a good knight. However, he calls her a traitor with a furious look on his face and proceeds to attack her using his magic armor, which shocks her. But immediately, Osamu breaks free of his restraints and jumps in front of Iris to save her, as he uses Life Absorb to absorb the water attack. Iris gets really excited to see him save her and Zamis irritatedly says he's using that strange magic again. Osamu understands that from the restraints of magic armor, the life-sucking sucked the magic power and transformed it into mere water, and he succeeded in escaping. But he only managed to do it because Zamis was focused on Iris and his magic was dispersed. And he's sure they won't let him escape with the same method if he gets caught again. Then Iris tries to tell him something, but before she could do that, Osamu pinches her on the head asking why she didn't just keep her mouth shut. Iris says because she doesn't want to be his enemy. Osamu seems surprised by that, then he smiles and thanks her, but right then, Zamis pierces his chest using his water magic armor and lifts him up asking what they're chatting about. After that, he furiously tells the other knights that punishing the traitor will have to wait, as they have to kill this guy first. Vengeance for their fallen comrades, as the other knights raise their weapons. Then they all furiously rush as Osamu to kill him. Iris screams and tells them to stop, not to attack, and not to kill him, but right then, a knight shoots dozens of arrows at Osamu. However, he immediately uses his magic to invert acceleration to negative, while Iris begs the kid to help her convince them, but he doesn't let her go. Osamu's magic instantly puts up a magic circle and throws the arrows back at the knights, and they hurriedly try to cover themselves. Iris keeps saying that Mr. Shu is her benefactor, while Zamis tells others that he's got some weird tricks up his sleeve, so to watch out, and a knight frustratedly requests him to say that beforehand. The young holy knight seems devastated to see his Iris senpai act like that and asks if she's going to betray them. He cries and asks if she isn't their friend. Iris also seems sad to hear that, as the kid continues saying that if she betrays them, then she's a witch. Meanwhile, Osamu gets attacked by the other holy knights at once as they attack him with 2nd tier of earth magic, 3rd tier of water magic, water prison 1, and several other magic. Osamu remains entrapped and gets badly hurt, but he somehow manages to hang in there, but using his magic, confinement method 9. Right then, a mage walks up with a big magic staff and tells him to see this, as she's sure he remembers. This tact is a relic that belonged to someone he killed, so she furiously tells him to repent for the things he has done and apologize to everyone by dying, as she starts charging up the staff with his magic. But Osamu tells her that he only killed him because he didn't want to die. Demons and humans are the same. They all don't want to die unreasonably. They are both resisting death to the bitter end. Hearing that, the mage shouts at him to shut up, as all monsters are evil and should be killed, as El Maja ordered, as she shoots powerful flame magic at him. Immediately, Osamu activates his vibration magic and uses it to manipulate the refraction of light to deflect the attack. It deflects the fire magic, which hits a house behind the knights and destroys it. At that, the knights frustratedly say the 4 attributes, 2 genera, and a strange technique that doesn't apply to any magic. So they worriedly call the captain, and at that, Zamis asks what it is if they're done here. Osamu understands that the same vibrational magic is used to slow down the molecular vibrations of the water, calling the entire water enclosure, so once it's frozen in airspace, it can be broken. At that moment, a chunk of the water prison breaks apart and falls to the ground. Then he thinks now if he can just burn it down and somehow get out of the magic. But right then, Zamis uses the water coming out of his magic armor to bring Osamu down fast and crash him into the ground. Osamu seems badly hurt and unable to move because of the impact, and Zamis asks if he thought he could escape. Then he reinforces his body with the magic armor and raises his bastard sword, telling him that it's over. He can take one blow of his magic armor, crushing it, so he suggests him to give up, as magic is ineffective against this magical armor, but Osamu looks furiously at him. So then, Zamis swings the sword at him with everything he has, and Osamu thinks, so this is it. He couldn't help it. He was too weak, that's all. That's his only regret. But right at the last moment, someone hits Zamis with a lightning impact. Because of that, Zamis fails to hit Osamu with the sword and the sword falls to the ground, which surprises both of them. In the blink of an eye, Zamis swings his sword again, aiming to hit Osamu. But Osamu manages to free himself and move away from there in the nick of time. He looks back and finds a crater formed on the place where he just was, while Zamis stands there looking stunned. Then he furiously looks at Iris and asks what the hell she thinks she's doing, as Iris is using her magic to prevent him from killing him. The young holy knight desperately kept trying to explain to Iris that it's not too late. The demon said it's a lie, so he begged her to tell him he's mistaken, and they'll forgive her. The kid tried to explain to her what El Maja ordered them, but right then, Iris pushed him away and attacked Zamis using her magic, lightning impact. Tears drip down from the kid's eyes, and Zamis excitedly asks Iris if she's for real, as he thought he'd do her a favor and let her off the hook if she played along. But it's a different story if she plans on getting in his way, as no one's going to cover for her anymore. At that, Iris cries and says she can't do it, it's impossible for her. She frustratedly tells Zamis that there's no way she could just stand by and watch Mr. Shu get killed, which angers Zamis even more. Meanwhile, Osamu thinks that if Iris hadn't used her lightning impact to deflect the sword's trajectory, he'd have been turned into magical dust by now. Then he notices that everyone's focused on them, so he understands that he has to use this little opportunity Iris has given him. They have to get through this somehow. He has to come up with a plan to break through. But right then, Iris gets hit on her legs by Zamis's water magic armor. She seems shocked and falls to the ground. Then some kind of memory that isn't hers flashes before her eyes for a moment, and she screams. The water stays in her legs and she keeps screaming as loud as she can. Seeing that, the senior from before hurriedly goes to her shouting no, and asks Zamis what the hell he has done. Zamis says that she's not going to die. The magic armor will heal her wounds and keep her alive. The senior also finds that the wounds are repeatedly getting destroyed as they get healed. So she understands that unless they break the spell, the pain will be semi-permanent, and sadly says, "It's so much harder not being able to die like this." Then Zamis asks her if she's planning to help her, as if she does she's just as guilty as her. But seeing Iris's condition, the senior knight says, surely she's under the spell of love. Zamis gets shocked to hear that. Then the senior says she's sure he has heard of it before. It's a spell that manipulates the mind and deceives the heart, and makes one lose control. Zamis says he knows, but if that isn't just a fairy tale, then the senior yells at him that she's sure there is, otherwise she wouldn't have done such a foolish thing. That's why she's protecting the demon. She tries to convince him, saying that it must be a force majeure. He must know. Hearing that, he thinks a bit, then dismissively says unfortunately, he's not going to show her any more mercy. He adds that in any case, she's bound to face the Inquisition until the day of execution, while suffering in agony for disobedience. Right then, the senior knight grabs Zamis's collar and infuriatedly tells him that she's their junior, but Zamis tells her that she's the one who betrayed them first. Meanwhile, Iris keeps panting due to the severe pain in her legs because of the water magic armor. Then Osamu gets close to her and wipes a tear from her eye with his finger. The senior knight notices him getting close to Iris, so she hurriedly goes up to him, telling him to get away from that girl right now. But then, Osamu gets back on his feet and looks at the senior knight with a creepy look on his face. The senior gets really scared by that. Then she looks to the side to see Iris's condition and lets Osamu go ahead, nervously requesting him to help her. Immediately, the head and body of every holy knight there except Iris and Zamis get cut off one after another in a matter of seconds, and they don't even get time to realize what's happening. As Osamu uses his skill sky-slashing domain, and Zamis sees every one of his comrades die before his own eyes, and he can't do anything about it. So he furiously screams at him, asking, how dare he, as he channels all of his anger and frustration into his attack, trying to kill Osamu, and keeps telling him to die. Osamu tries his best to keep dodging the attacks, while Zamis infuriatedly asks Iris if he's her master, if he taught her magic, as a monster teaching a human is disgusting. Osamu tells him that he'll kill him himself, he won't let anyone take Iris away from him. Hearing that, Zamis calls him a demon, enemy of humans, and shouts at him not to pretend to be a human, as he increases the magic output of his magic armor to the maximum and tries to kill Osamu with all he has. But right then, Osamu's eye shines with a dark energy and he tells him to die. Immediately, he activates his magic, life-sucking, and starts sucking in all of his magic energy in the form of water through his hand. Zamis can't do anything to stop him, as before he could even realize what's happening, Osamu absorbs his everything, even his flesh and bones, and only a hollow armor remains. And then, he hears that sound again. He finds that he can hear it clearly now, deep inside his body, deep within himself. Something tells him that, with the lives of the holy knights the life-sucking turned into death, and with his enormous magical power, Hishu Archlight will be transformed from spirit into a new race. He says the name of this new race is Death Elementa, as right then his attire changes to a much darker and more powerful looking one, reflecting his newfound strength. After that, Iris gets up and seems surprised to find that Zamis's spell on her has been broken. Then she looks at Osamu and wonders if he's now Death's spirit, as she already knew he's a demon. But then, she looks to the front and finds the head of her senior fallen on the ground, creepily looking at her and calling her a treacherous witch. The next moment, Iris finds the head lifeless. She looks around her and finds the bodies of all her comrades fallen on the ground, so she starts crying. Seeing that, Osamu worriedly asks her if she's hurt, then Iris tells him, so he was a demon. Osamu apologizes for not telling her, but he tells her that he can't apologize for killing them, because he too had many lives and homes taken away from him. He explains that there was affection in his foggy emotions. Certainly, he felt an attachment to them, and because he lost them he felt sadness. Of course, the same goes for her, but he will not let them take her from him. The only one, the one person who didn't wish him dead. Hearing that, Iris wipes away her tears. Then Osamu tells her that he didn't want to die anymore, so he killed them, and asks if she hates him now. After hearing all that, Iris remains speechless for a moment. Then she asks if he's asking if she hates him, as that's impossible. She gets up and excitedly says, after all, she has been saved by him, which surprises Osamu. Then Iris tells him that she wants to continue to be with him, but she also thinks there should be some discipline as a holy knight. She has trampled on the goodwill of people who have done her a great service, so she'll do her duty as a holy knight. She must return to Ardana and report to the bishop. She grabs Osamu's hand and tells him she'll tell everyone home that everyone in the squad was killed by the Demon King, and they said they'd never harm the city. She thinks she's sure that taking his hand means throwing away the possibility of walking alongside a kind person like her senior. She can't believe she betrayed her comrades who fought alongside her. Maybe she's stupid, maybe she's unreasonable. But still, she embraces the warmth of his hand and thinks, more than anything in this world, he saved her life ever since that time. So then, Osamu says he understood, and he promises not to touch her Donna while she is there. Iris gladly thanks him for that. After that, she points at her hand and nervously tells him that she's sorry to be the one to say this, but it's time he lets go of it. However, he grabs her hand more tightly and tells her that he'll promise her one more thing. She surprisingly asks another one. Osamu tells her that he'll protect her, even if it means turning the whole world into their enemy. He promises her. Hearing that, Iris tries to tell him something, but tears start dripping from her eyes, and she puts her head against his hand. After a while, as the sun starts setting, Osamu proceeds to leave, saying he'll be staying in the forest then. He needs to adjust himself so he can better control his newly acquired power. Iris says then she'll get going as well, but she asks what if she doesn't come back. Osamu says he'll definitely come and pick her up. Iris seems happy to hear that. After that, she heads back to the city telling him she's off. However, the next day at the anti-demon church, everyone gets shocked to hear that the holy knights have been killed. The head bishop worriedly says what a blunder, and the head priestess asks what the name of the survivor is. Someone from behind says the name of the only survivor of the strike force, and hearing that, someone asks if he just said Silver Bullet. The priests grievously say more than 20 holy knights were deployed but only one managed to survive, and pray for them, calling them chosen great children who sacrificed their lives. The archbishop tells others to make sure the people never hear this news, as the loss of such an enormous force would be repugnant. Some priests say they didn't expect them all to be killed. They were sure they were all strong enough to kill the disaster class. Right then, Iris enters the room and reports to them that she's Iris Silverbullet, and she has returned. Hearing that, the bishop and priests present there all turn to her and look at her with skeptical eyes. The bishop tells her that it was hard work. He knows she's tired from her long journey, but first, he'd like her to give him a report of what happened. He adds that he heard all of the troops who went to the battle were killed except her, so he asks the demon of the wicked star prophecy what this monster is that can kill even the most elite holy knights. Iris says that the monster is a mutated ogre king with hypertrophied magical power. Everyone gets shocked to hear that, as the bishop says it's ridiculous. He finds it hard to believe that they lost to a monster of that caliber. Iris says they were all overwhelmed by its power and fell. She thinks if she honestly tells about Shu, the church will gather the holy knights again, and this time they'll march on Eldora Forest with everything they've got. She'd never want that to happen, but it's true that everyone died, so she decides she'll mix with lies. She continues that the Demon King realized she'd not die due to her magic equipment, so only she returned alive as a messenger, and he said they won't attack again if they don't interfere with them. One priest sounds shocked to hear that the demons are making demands, and another priest says he didn't know it could think that far ahead, but he also thinks about the mutation. Then the head priestess asks, so if the great demon king is the malefic star, and the bishop sounds conflicted as if they don't attack there'll be no damages but they have the prophecy, and must nip this evil in the bud. Iris tries to explain that it wouldn't kill if they don't touch it. They can leave it alone and not let anyone go into the depths of Eldora. But right then, the doubtful man from before walks up to her from behind and says in a sinister tone that he smells lies. Iris gets startled by that. Then the man grabs his nose and says that the scent of bright red ripe camellias. He smells a liar hiding an important truth. Iris looks worried, while a priest calls the man Gremlin and nervously tells him that if he has something to say, then to say it clearly. At that, Gremlin asks if he didn't notice. It's a contradiction. He questions Iris why the magic armor of Holy Knight Zamus was so easily broken through, and if her magic armor is unbreakable. He continues that even though its immortality, it has its limits, as magical equipment is only effective as long as the magic power lasts. This is the unwavering truth in magic. He adds that he believes her magic is high rank, which is good. However, Zamus was by far superior in both combat power and magical equipment. So Gremlin asks Iris how it is that she's the only one who survived and not him, why she's the only one who made it out alive. He furiously tells her to answer him. Hearing all that, Iris nervously thinks she has to say something. Anything is fine, she tells herself to say it, but she wonders why. She can't speak, she can't move her body. It's terrible, she's scared, she finds him scary as her dark childhood memories start flashing before her eyes. Finding no response from Iris, Gremlin grabs her by her hair and excitedly tells the bishop that this woman is lying. His obedient soul, which he dedicated to God after serving as a member of the Inquisition for many years, tells him so. And so he keeps putting pressure on Iris, telling her to now speak the truth, to tell them what really happened in Eldora Forest. Then Iris gives into the pressure as she says it's a special type of demon. He killed everyone. The captain's magic equipment was instantly destroyed by his powerful magic. And the race of that demon is a spirit. The priests present there get terrified to hear that. As if it's just a spirit, then they expect the worst. Iris continues that at first, he was pinned down by Captain and was forced into a disadvantageous position. Then suddenly, a magic circle appeared and tore through dozens of mages in an instant. Hearing that, a priest frighteningly says, if it's a spirit that controls death, then it has the ability to control life-sucking, and wonders if he stole the magic power of the dead knights. Iris further continues that he gained tremendous power, and when the captain fought him, overflowing with black magic, the magic armor was torn off his body and taken away. Then the captain disappeared without a trace, and with the captain's magical power, the spirit evolved into a death spirit. Hearing that, the bishop worriedly says, monsters that have developed unique abilities are told in legends. The king of the demons. He explains that the king demon is a special being that evolved in a way that can be called an awakening. It is said that its magical power changes colors and becomes so strong that it shakes the heavens and earth. People feared that power and called it the law of magic. The priests also get worried to hear that and find it hard to believe. So then, Iris says, the prophecy of the wicked star, it was the demon king's magic, and Mr. Shu is the demon king. The bishop says he was worried about this. Princess Kimiko's prophecy has come true. But then the head priestess thinks about it and asks if it's because they sent the holy knights, as she asks if the magic power of one holy knight isn't equal to that of 200 common soldiers. So she explains 20 or so of these elite class holy knights would be more than enough to outnumber the army of a single country. That's how it gained an enormous amount of magic power, and to top it all off, the spirit turned into a death spirit, and that's how he became king. But then she worriedly says she shouldn't say this. However, a senior priest furiously tells the bishop that's why he told him to wait for the messenger of Saint Grinia. At that, the bishop tells him that he's the one who selected Zamus and he failed. Hearing that, another priest irritatedly asks him, with due respect, if he intends to blame his compatriots who died so bravely. The bishop furiously tells him to shut up. Others say they should immediately send a messenger to call for reinforcement. But the bishop doesn't agree. The previous priest says he's sure his failure will be exposed, but they must avenge their brothers, especially since a demon king has been born. God forbid they should overlook this. Hearing that, the bishop seems really irritated. Then the priest tells the others that when reinforcements will arrive, they'll regroup, and this time they'll take them down. It hasn't been long, so they still have a chance. Everyone excitedly says, that's right, this time they'll defeat them. But right then, Iris shouts at them to wait. She desperately tells them that Mr. Shu will not harm them. If they don't do anything, he won't attack them. That's what he promised, so she begs them to not go to the forest anymore. But then, Gremlin asks if Shu will keep his word to the humans. Iris sadly says, he promised her. He's her master, he taught her magic, and he'll protect her, so she requests them to just leave him alone. Then Gremlin asks her with a furious look on his face if she sold out her friends. Iris hurriedly says, no, she didn't. However, Gremlin says that she must have communicated with the monsters in advance and lured them into the forest and left them to die. He excitedly tells everyone that's why she's the only one who survived. Yes, it all makes sense now. It's all her fault. Iris tries to say that's not true. But Gremlin doesn't listen to her and continues that the stench of filth, the strong stench of a traitor, as expected, the stench of blood can't be erased. Then Iris tries to request the bishop to let her talk. However, the bishop agrees with Gremlin, as he says with a smile, that's right, it's because of her the holy knights were killed. Then Gremlin requests him to add this to his message to the capital, that they've captured the witch who betrayed her friends and is responsible for the birth of the demon king. He'll use the authority of the Inquisition to deal with this and prepare for execution. Iris seems really terrified as the priests capture her, and the bishop tells Gremlin, now then. He leaves everything else up to him and requests him, adding that everything is according to El Magia. A few days later, in the inner depths of the Eldora Forest, Osamu keeps on experimenting with his newfound powers and says he has gotten the hang of this magic now. He finds that the voice that teaches says that this is death magic. Only those who understand the laws of the world and magic can master it, and it's said to be capable of killing its target with a single touch. Osamu understands that death itself is an unreasonable force. If used incorrectly and in the wrong place, it can wreak havoc. That's why he needed to stay away from Iris until he could control it, because there was a chance he might accidentally kill her even though he said he'd protect her. But with this, they're all good now. Then Osamu looks to the side and finds 3 spirits looking at him from a distance. As soon as he looks at them, they get startled. Then they think they want to get closer, but they're afraid. So Osamu gets into his materialistic form saying it's fine now and tells them to look. The spirits get excited to see that. Then they happily float around him and Osamu thinks there are only low-class spirits here, so he guesses the pig demons and the goblins in the village didn't survive. He gets sad by that and says it's gotten really quiet. Then he recalls Iris calling him Mr. Shu. He remembers she kept asking him about different types of magic, what it does, how it works. And she also talked about things like, there's a super delicious bakery nearby. Osamu remembers the fond memories of years of meeting up with her in the forest, and gets silent. Then he heads to the city she lives in to meet her. He goes to her house and knocks on her door, but he finds no response, so he wonders if she's not here. He thinks he'll just wait inside, as he remembers Iris telling him that he can come into the house even when she's not there. So then Osamu uses his magic to open the lock on the door. Then he enters the house and finds it pretty empty. He looks around and comes across a framed picture beside a dying plant. He picks up the picture and finds that it's a picture of Iris with her father beside her. But then, he realizes something. He hurriedly gets out of the house shouting Iris's name and looking for her, while Iris is restrained and being transported to the capital via a carriage. Osamu understands it's not like there weren't any concerns if she reports the situation, as they might end up in conflict just like with Zamus and the others if they don't play their cards right. However, Iris is stubborn, as she confidently told him not to worry. Everything will be fine and to believe in her, so Osamu guesses it didn't work out somehow. He searched for Iris using magic sense but there was no response, so he looks at the heart of the city, the cathedral, and thinks that's where all the holy knights of Indara gather. She's most like held captive there. So then he enters an alleyway near the cathedral and enhances his magic power by getting into his spirit form. He understands that once in his spirit form, it'll be easier to break into the building, but then he tells himself to wait. The cathedral is the headquarters of the anti-demon order, so he wonders if it isn't possible that strong countermeasures have been put in place in the event of a monster attack. He also thinks that in case there's a more powerful magic sense than his, he may be spotted right away. And if Iris becomes a hostage because of that, he understands it'd be really bad. So he decides to get back to his materialistic form thinking he should avoid that possibility. And then he wonders what he should do. At that moment, a traveling merchant notices him and calls him. Hearing that, Osamu looks at the merchant and the merchant excitedly says, yes, he knew it. He asks Osamu if he brought any money that day. A while later, the merchant heads to the back gate of the cathedral, and the guard there lets him enter, thanking him for his hard work as always. After that, he enters the cathedral with someone else pulling his cart. A chef waiting for him inside tells them they idiots are late, and the merchant apologizes as it took them a while to get the goods. But he tells the chef to look as in return he has brought him the finest ingredients. The chef agrees with him. However, he irritatedly says the next time he's late, he'll get someone else to do it. He has to make a delicious meal. And the bishop seems to be in a bad mood that day. After that, the chef continues ranting and the merchant keeps on listening to it, while Osamu takes the chance to sneak inside the cathedral. As he walks inside he thinks, fortunately, he had someone help him, and he was able to enter the cathedral while materialized. The merchant got surprised to hear him say that he came all the way from the countryside to see his holy knight sister, and he wants to surprise her. Then he smiled and said he's sure they'll get along just fine. He'll help him get into the cathedral, and he wants him to help out at the store now. Osamu surprisedly said, so that's the deal. The merchant also told him not to worry about getting caught, as he'll frame the head chef and leave. He hates the guy, so it's about time he moves on. The merchant added that more importantly, he's interested in seeing how the whole thing plays out. So then Osamu continues down a hallway thinking, it was a strange feeling. He's a demon, a monster, hostile to humans, but he's in the circle created by humans, and he was helped. He is being helped. Right then, he hears some trainee knights walking together and gossiping, as one asks if they heard about that traitor witch. and his friends make an affirmative sound. Osamu tries to go after them, but right then, he sees a priest walking and stretching his arms in front of him. Seeing him, the priest surprisedly asks what's an outsider doing here, but before he could do anything, Osamu knocks him unconscious. After that, among the trainee knights, one asks what about that one, the story that went viral before the gag order was issued in the forest. At that moment, Osamu walks up behind them and asks if they can tell him more about what they just said. Looking at him, one knight confusedly whispers to his friend asking who this person is, and the friend says it seems like he's a priest based on his clothes. So then the trainee excitedly says, yes, of course, it's just that he's wondering if they know anything that the priest doesn't. Osamu says that he has been sent to a neighboring country so he just came back, and apparently, everybody's out of town, so he'd like to know what happened while he was gone. The trainee says in that case, a few weeks ago, a strike team was dispatched to the Eldora Forest. The only surviving knight was punished for being a traitor, and then a new strike team was sent. That's why there are so few people in the church, Osamu says. That's not what he wants to know. He asks where the traitor is now. If they have been isolated in a punishment room or something. The trainee says no, they were taken to the royal capital and will be burned at the stake. And hearing that, he gets shocked. The trainee says yes, since ancient times those who betray the holy order will be burned at the stake. In the capital their body and soul will be purified by the fire, and begging for forgiveness. The trainee knights laugh and say they learned that in class, so nostalgic, but then Osamu asks why, which surprises them. Osamu asks them with a terrifying look on his face why they're laughing, which scares them, and the trainee who was talking to him apologizes, wondering why he's mad at him. But then, a girl beside him keeps laughing and tells him, because it suits her in the end, which angers Osamu. The girl continues that she's a holy knight now, but back when she was a student, there were only bad rumors about her. She used to be her classmate, so he knows her very well. She explains that her grades were bad and she couldn't even do magic. She was a failure, and asks if they know when her grades improved all of a sudden. She heard she used her body appeal to the people around her. Hearing all that, Osamu's eyes seem to be burning with rage, which worries the others. So one of them tries to tell the girl that she should stop now, but the girl keeps on talking, saying, after that, people kept praising her and calling her an high-rank student, and all that. But it's all a lie, she's not that good, and she's sure she joined the subjugation team because she used her body to win over the men. The girl mockingly adds, after all, she betrayed the church, she was a lousy woman, so it serves her right. Then she excitedly tells Osamu she's nothing like her, by the way. Excellent grades and plenty of magical power. She's just not ready for the real thing right now, but one day soon. She'll be a knight of the Holy Order and have an extraordinary career. But then she gets confused seeing Osamu furiously looking at her. He asks if she's done talking nonsense, which confuses the girl even more, and then Osamu grabs her by her dress and lifts her up. Seeing that, the others get worried and request him to refrain from being violent, while the girl strugglingly says, "That hurts," and tells him to get his hands off her. She screams to let go of her. Osamu tells her to take it back, as Iris is not the kind of person she should be laughing at. The girl nervously asks why. He's saying that as if he did, then she sees the rage in his eyes. So she excitedly says she knew it, that woman was selling her body, they were so easily manipulated by her. Then she tries to get herself free, telling Osamu to stop touching her with his dirty hands, calling him a bastard, while her friend tells her to not get excited and to shut her mouth for once. But then, the trainee knight realizes something. He asks Osamu how he knew Iris's name, which shocks the others. Osamu asks if he's asking how he knows, as an image of Iris flashes before his eyes, and he frustratedly says, because she is his disciple, and then he reveals his true form. The trainee knights get terrified to see, as they realize it's a demon, and they also see a dark aura, so they find it hard to believe but say that this is the guy from Eldora Forest. The girl who is criticizing about Iris seems speechless, so Osamu gets close to her and tells her not to be just quiet, to take it back for laughing at Iris. However, the girl tries to suppress her fear and says, "Screw him." Hearing that, Osamu annoyedly asks if that's so. Then he uses his life absorb on her and starts absorbing everything. The girl keeps screaming while her magic, flesh, and bones, everything gets taken from her. Only her clothes remain. Seeing that, a trainee tells everyone to get ready to attack as they'll get promoted if they kill him. One tells others to stay back as the credit is his, while another says they should call for backup. Osamu asks if they don't care about the death of their comrade, and the trainees sound surprised, as they ask what this monster is talking about. They tell him to just hurry up and die for their sake. After that, Osamu uses life absorb on them all and they end up like the girl before. Only the trainee who suggested calling for backup remains. He seems horrified by all that and falls to the ground. Osamu asks him what path he should take to pursue Iris, and the trainee tells him to go outside the north gate, then to follow the road northeast. Hearing that, Osamu recognizes that it's a town with cemetery. But the trainee nervously laughs and says, even if he goes now it's already too late, as it takes 10 days to get to the capital. However, the carriage carrying the witch was specially made with magic, so they should arrive before King Ramza in 2 days. The trainee excitedly tells him that the execution is in 3 days, so he'll never make it in time. No matter what he does, it's no use, so he laughs and says it serves him right. Then Osamu thanks him for his kind advice, but says he can make it in time, which disappoints the trainee knight. He thinks he'll go flying straight through the air continuously using acceleration magic day and night. If he transforms into his spirit form, he can move around without worrying about any obstacles. And with a body that doesn't feel tired and doesn't need sleep, he should be able to get there in 3 days. So Osamu says he never thought the day would come when he'd be grateful to be a spirit. The trainee frustratedly says even if he makes it in time it's no use. Ramza is protected by some of the finest knights in the land, so no matter how much of a monster he is, he doesn't stand a chance. Hearing all that, Osamu knocks him back with his magic and annoyedly says he talks too much. Right then, reinforcement arrives and tells him to not move. A priest accompanied by holy knights hurriedly comes at him telling him that this is the end of doing as he pleases, calling him a monster, and asks how dare he break into their sacred cathedral. Seeing that, Osamu says, one after the other, such a pain in the back, but he doesn't have time to deal with each and every one of them, so he places his hand on the floor and activates his magic. He activates vibration magic to generate ultrasonic waves and activates magic sense at the same time to detect vibrations. He understands that the ultrasonic reflections will help him find what he's looking for as he tries to sense something deep underground, and finally finds it. He finds a huge underground water vein that brought about the lush greenery of Eldora Forest. Then he uses acceleration magic and gravity magic. He also sets up a vibration magic circle. After that, he connects and visualizes the circuits of the 3 formations. At that moment, the priest tells the knights to kill him as they all attack him at once, while Osamu thinks he saw a glimpse of the world Iris lived in. He understands that it's been like that since long ago, and he's sure she's been subjected to a lot of heartless words. Then an image of Iris flashes before Osamu's eyes and he says, such a world, he will destroy it. Immediately, some kind of enormous energy erupts from the ground below them. The traveling merchant was waiting outside and talking to the guard saying, it must be tough standing in the sun all day. The guard says, no, not at all, he has it easy as it's peaceful in the city. But right then, the whole cathedral explodes behind them and comes crashing down to the ground. All the priests and holy knights inside scream and cry out loud as most of them get crushed under the debris and die, while Osamu floats in the air and thinks he has never seen a large steam explosion before, but it seems like he has done a good job. He understands that liquid water expands 1,000 times in volume when it turns into vapor by manipulating the pressure and temperature of the water in the underground water veins. The water is instantly vaporized, causing a steam explosion. In addition, the acceleration spell changed all the pressure of the explosion upward, and the force blew the cathedral to pieces. He looks down and finds the dying priests and knights raising their hands and calling for God in their final moments. At that, he says that he hopes they suffer at best. By then, people have gathered outside and worriedly question why this happened. Then they notice him and realize that he's a demon, so they frustratedly ask what on earth the holy knights are doing. The archbishop worriedly says, only a few people made it out of the explosion. Then he tells the holy knights that they must do everything in their power to eliminate this monster. He furiously says, a being that's wrapped in a black aura with huge sinister magic power. It's him, the prophecy of the wicked star. So then, he calls for Elmaja and tells her to give them her blessings, as the remaining priests and holy knights all prepare themselves to fight Osamu. The townspeople tell them to kill him quickly as they ask what they're doing if they aren't holy knights. At that, one priest looks back and frustratedly tells them all to just shut up and go back home. Right then, Osamu tells the townspeople that it'd be wise to remain silent, or else he'll destroy the entire city as he uses life absorb on the priests and holy knights and sucks up their everything. In a matter of seconds, not even their bones remain. Then Osamu looks at the townspeople and asks if it's okay, while they seem totally shocked by all that and remain silent. Osamu says yes, he doesn't hate people who listen well. Right then he notices some low-class spirits hiding behind some rubble. He gets surprised to see them and asks where the hell they have been. And the spirits say there were a lot of humans, so they were scared. Then Osamu tells them that they should go. As they fly up into the sky and start heading toward the capital, however, the townspeople still seem shocked to see the cathedral completely destroyed. The next day in the morning, at the Ramza Kingdom, people gather near the cathedral, as one asks another if they heard, and the person asks if it isn't the witch's execution. She excitedly says it's finally happening the next day, while others say that it seems the criminal's identity is unknown, and ask as long as evil suffers if it really matters who it is. They say that they even went out of their way to prepare a special execution platform, so they guess they need a special foundation for the unclean soul to stand on. Some gladly say God is so kind to purify them with holy fire, while Iris is locked up in a cell deep inside the Ramza Kingdom Cathedral dungeon, and keeps thinking about Osamu. One of the guards outside says that he never thought he'd see a witch appear from the holy nights. The other guard asks how she's doing, as she's awfully quiet even though she's about to be executed. Meanwhile, inside the cell, Iris rolls around and irritatedly says she screwed up. She just couldn't help herself from interrupting. She understands that she was caught, stuffed into a carriage, and forcibly brought here. While coming to the capital, Inquisitor Gremlin told her that she's a hopeless fool, abandoned by God, so she must die, calling her immortal witch Iris Silverbullet. Iris annoyedly asked what's wrong with him, as he has been saying all kinds of unpleasant things to her, with eyes that seem to truly hate her. She remembers that she felt clear malice from him. However, now she sighs and says she's hungry. She wants to eat sweet bread. Iris understands that this situation is the worst, but she finds that her heart is calm, as Shu-san promised her that even if the whole world becomes his enemy, he'll protect her. So Iris thinks he's absolutely coming to help. She believes in Shu-san, and she also thinks if she can get out here in one piece, she wants the two of them to go on a journey. She wants to eat delicious bread, do some work, and live in a lovely house like that, just the two of them, together forever. Right then, Gremlin opens the door and walks in. He tells her with an excited look on his face that it's execution time. After that, he grabs her by her arm and forces her to get up, which hurts her. Then he tightly holds her face and says what an unpleasant face. At that, Iris frustratedly tells him to not touch her, and then Gremlin slaps her on the face telling her not to talk back to him. He gladly says he has been waiting for this moment to come, as he has always known it for a long time that she'll definitely betray God. He excitedly adds, yes, blood cannot be denied. Hearing that, Iris confusedly asks what it is and tells him to say it. Gremlin realizes that she doesn't remember, so he says then he'll tell her as a souvenir for the underworld and tells the guard to go wait upstairs. The guards agree to do that and leave. Then Gremlin gets close to Iris and asks if his face looks familiar. Iris tries to move away and nervously says he's the Inquisitor, but then she says, come to think of it, he was at the inauguration ceremony. Gremlin says, long before that, so then Iris thinks more carefully and remembers it. She says, he's the man who came to tell her about the death of her father and mother. Hearing that, Gremlin excitedly says she finally remembers. Oh, her Daria Silverbullet, Rose Silverbullet, foolish souls who have fallen into the underworld they were. Iris worriedly asks to the underworld what he's talking about, as they both died in the line of duty. They were killed by a monster in the disaster class subjugation battle. Gremlin tells her that's a lie. He killed them both, which shocks her. He adds that 18 years ago, it was during the disaster class subjugation mission. Daria and Rose led a unit to subdue the demon. He was so excited he thought he was going to lose it. It was a matter of pride for him to be assigned to these two excellent and honorable people. Gremlin continues that the unit successfully cornered the disaster class Dark Knight. However, Daria suddenly told everyone to protect the Dark Knight and the boy. Everyone got shocked to hear, and Gremlin asked what he's talking about. Just a little more and they'll be able to defeat the Dark Knight, but Daria told him to take a look. The demon is protecting the child and the child is relying on the demon. Gremlin tried to explain that it just looks like it's protecting him. But monsters and humans never communicate. And suppose it were true, at that point the child has fallen into evil, so it shouldn't be kept alive. But Daria said, they don't kill children. Then the other knights also insisted Daria to think again, as they asked if they should overlook this because they're a child, as that judgment is too lenient. Daria said it's okay to be lenient. However, the other holy knights didn't listen to him and kept saying, no matter the reason, the demon must be judged. Daria told them that certainly, evil mustn't be forgiven, But Almaja's teachings also include the following passage: love one another and be kind to each other. This likely includes that child as well. So he asked with a smile. Now, two teachings are at odds with each other, so which one they'd choose? As he'll choose what he thinks is more important even if they point fingers at him. Right then, a mage came and told him she too agrees with him. Gremlin got shocked to hear even Rose say that too. Then Rose told him to calm down, as she senses a bond and compassion between the Dark Knight and the child, and love should be answered with love. Gremlin tells Iris that despite their protests, they attempted to protect the child and the demon, while the other knights discussed among themselves what they would do. They said that they don't want to turn them both into traitors, but they can't overlook this heresy, and Gremlin also frustratedly thought he can't allow himself to overlook this. After that, Daria and Rose slowly approached the Dark Knight. Daria introduced himself as Daria Silverbullet and told them not to worry as they won't hurt them anymore. But the child seemed wary. Seeing that, Rose said he's scared and Daria said maybe he wasn't raised by decent parents. Then he assured the Dark Knight that they'll take the child to a safe place, so if he wants to protect the human child, he requested him to believe them and told them to come this way. But right at that moment, Gremlin shoved his spear into his body from the back and furiously told him, if he betrays God, then he dies. He then forcibly pulled out his spear by pushing down Daria's body with his feet. And before Rose could do anything, Gremlin pierces her in the chest. Seeing all that, the others frustratedly said, Gremlin, that bastard has gone mad. They're not going to make it, but they shouldn't let the Dark Knight get away. Now, Gremlin explains to Iris that her parents betrayed God. Just like her, they sheltered a demon and blasphemed. That's why he killed them. Of course, he also disposed of the evil demon knight, but unfortunately, he failed to kill the child. Gremlin adds that he did the right thing. However, killing one's kin between holy knights is a grave sin, so he decided to bury the truth at the crime scene. He had to report that Daria and Rose died in the line of duty while subjugating the disaster class. As a result, he was able to escape punishment without his guilt being known. He buried their bodies in the forest, and his body was overflowing with the joy of offering up unclean souls to God. Gremlin continues, then he remembered that the couple had a child, a 5-year-old daughter. He knew because they bragged about it every day at work. He hurried to their house. It was just after the babysitter left, and he didn't want to leave behind a bloodline that'll defy Almaja's will. So he tried to kill her and send her to the underworld right away. But at that moment some other knights arrived there and one knocked on the door asking if anyone's inside. He told Iris that they're colleagues of her father and mother, and he has something to tell her, so he requested her to open the door. Hearing that, Gremlin got annoyed but hurriedly left the house using teleportation magic, saying, bad luck, as he had no other choice. Now he tells Iris that she must have lost all memory of it due to a strong shock, but he has always remembered it vividly, and he can't tell her how many times he has regretted not killing her then, while tears gather up in Iris's eyes. Then she furiously calls him and grabs him by his clothes. Gremlin smiles and says she must really hate him, but now it's too late, she's about to be executed now. As he grabs her by her hair and drags her out of the cell, excitedly laughing and saying, come on, finally at last. He prays to God to let the flames of purification burn, as the guards gag Iris's mouth and tie up her body with a rope, while she keeps crying. After that, Gremlin brings her out by pulling the rope, in front of the hundreds of people gathered outside. He looks up and excitedly says, what a clear blue sky. It makes him want to sing, as he starts humming while Iris is being tied to the stake. After she is tied up properly and all the preparations are done, Gremlin tells everyone gathered there that they'll now begin the execution. All the citizens gathered there start talking among themselves. So then, Gremlin calls the people and tells them to be silent and listen. He says the witch here has close ties with monsters, a heretic who obtained magical power from monsters. He then starts climbing some magic stairs saying, their magic is divine bestowed by God, and to learn this from a demon is a betrayal of God. Therefore, she's to be burned alive. Then he gets close to Iris and tells her that the magic armor of immortality will protect her. But if they keep burning her until she runs out of magic power, then she'll eventually die. He adds that the longer she continues to live, the more the fire magic unleashed by a first-class holy knight will inflict her with unimaginable pain. But he tells her not to worry, as there's always an end to everything. Soon her soul will be guided to the helpless underworld of Almaja where her parents await. Hearing all that, Iris keeps crying and Gremlin enjoys it, while the guards find it hard to control the mob. A woman irritatedly asks if they could hurry up and start already, and her friend nervously tells her, well, there are lots of processes involved. A servant informs his master that the next appointment is waiting, and the master tells him to complain to that long-winded inquisitor who goes on and on. Then he excitedly says, more importantly, he should pay close attention too, as he'll be hooked on once he hears the screams coming from her lungs, scorched by flames. Hearing that and seeing all the people around him, a kid asks his mother if the witch did something bad. The mother tells him that's right, the worst thing. She betrayed Lord Almaja and made him angry. The kid asks if God is angry, where that person's soul will go. Right then, an old man tells him that sinners who stray from the teachings of God will fall into the underworld, and fallen souls will continue to suffer eternal pain. So he tells him if he wants to go to the throne of Almaja after he dies, not to betray him like that witch. Then God will accept the believer and give him eternal blessing and peace. After that, the kid confusedly says he wonders why she betrayed him even though demons are evil beings, while tears keep falling from Iris's eyes as she thinks about her past. She thinks that her father and mother said they became Holy Knight because they wanted to protect people, and she was so proud. She wanted to become a holy knight just like them, so she couldn't give up, no matter how much she was looked down upon or called a failure. Iris understands that she didn't run away with Mr. Shu and return to the church because she wanted to at least fulfill her duty as a holy knight until the end. But right then, a holy knight orders others to fire, as 5 first-class holy knights all point their magical staff at Iris and activate their fire magic to burn her to death. Seeing that, Iris regretfully thinks that in the end, it didn't work out. It was a human who bullied her. The one who killed her parents is a human, and she'll also be killed by a human. So she keeps crying, believing that, to her, evil is human, but Mr. Shu was always the one to save her. He was always there for her, showing her kindness, even since then. However, at that moment, she hears a voice telling her that her face says she has a boring life, which surprises her. She hurriedly looks up and finds Osamu floating in the air, right in front of her, and Osamu tells her with a smile that he has come to help. She seems really glad to see him, and then he says no need for restraints, as he uses his magic to break the rope binding Iris in an instant, setting her free. Immediately, he grabs her by her arm and pulls her close, and Iris hugs him tight. Seeing that, Osamu feels sympathetic toward her. While people worriedly ask what that monster was just now, it suddenly flew down from the sky and jumped into the flame. Also, there are so many ghosts that don't usually appear. Gremlin tries to cover his face from the intense flames and finds it hard to believe. Right then, the fire shines brightly, which startles everyone. Osamu emerges out of fire with Iris in his arms, as he tells everyone that he'll take her back, which shocks Gremlin. Iris tells Osamu that he's late, even though he said all that cool stuff about protecting her. At that, Osamu says she too said, "Leave it to me," and then got caught. Right then, Iris coughs. Then Osamu tells her that's typical of her, but she's missing the point. Iris embarrassedly says yes, but Osamu says with a smile, that's okay, as no matter how desperate the situation, he'll always protect her, which amazes Iris. Meanwhile, the citizens worriedly ask if that could be the monster that taught the witch magic, but one guy says, well, he'll be defeated soon. After all, the capital is protected by the finest holy knights. Then Gremlin shouts and asks Osamu if he'll take the witch back, so he sees he's Shu, the hateful demon that has defiled the work of God. He tells him with a crazy look on his face that he's going to kill him, just like the evil knight from back then, and orders the holy knights to knock them down now. Then they all attack Osamu with their magic at once, but Osamu easily manages to block the attacks using a magic circle. So he questions if this is the power of the Holy Knights of Ramza, as it's weaker than Zamas. But then he says, no, he got stronger. The knights keep attacking him with their magic, telling him to die, calling him a monster, as they furiously ask if he thinks he can stand against them, the holy knights. But right then, Osamu activates his death magic. Immediately, dozens of death spirits come out of him and start sucking in every last bit of life forces of the holy knights. Every last bit of their being turns into energy and gets absorbed by Osamu, so he understands that death magic has transformed, and wonders if this is also the effect of the increased power, while Iris looks at him with sparkling eyes and says, beautiful. The citizens hurriedly try to run away from there, saying, the knights have been sucked away by the demon. How horrifying. It's like a world of death itself. The archbishop grabs his medallion and frightenedly says, the underworld. The underworld has manifested. That demon was sent from the underworld. The remaining knights say it must be the monster mentioned in the report, a deviant being that grants magic to witches, commands spirit-type monsters, and suppresses death spirits. They add that appearance of his looks just like the king of the underworld who governs death, Hades. Osamu hears them calling him Hades and says that doesn't sound so bad, king of the underworld Shu Archlight. Then Iris tells him that he has a favor to ask. She points at Gremlin and says that that person killed her parents a long time ago, so she requests Osamu to take care of him. Osamu says he doesn't mind but asks if that's okay. Iris thinks a bit, then she says with a smile, "That's enough." Right then, Gremlin frustratedly asks if he's the king of the underworld, as he tells Osamu not to mess with him. He calls them insolent fools who insult God and tells them not to think they can get away with this, as both of them will eventually face the divine judgment of Almaja's iron hammer. At that moment, Osamu points his finger at him and tells him to burn and disappear. Immediately raging flames erupt from below Gremlin and burn him from inside out. He screams his lungs out because of the immense pain. In a matter of seconds, he falls to the floor. His body burns to a crisp and dies a painful death. In his final moments, he raises his hand and calls for God, then he totally stops moving while Iris looks at him the whole time. After that, Osamu says the faith of Almaja seems to want to take everything he holds dear, so he'll not forgive their God. Until then, anyone who wants to escape, he tells them to do so. As when dawn breaks, he'll wipe out this whole country. This is revenge, but his objective is not killing people. However, those who remain consider themselves dead, as he says with a furious look in his eyes that he'll cast everything into the underworld. Osamu understands that they can't escape death. Even if they want to live, they'll still get killed, as immediately after he and Iris leave, the people hurriedly try to get out of the capital as well. The soldiers tell everyone that the king of the underworld is coming to destroy them all, so to leave everything behind and only take their lives, run outside the gate if they don't want to die. A girl screams no and cries as she asks her dad why he isn't coming, and her dad explains to her that they are a people blessed by Almaja. And as for him, it's his duty to protect this country and everyone, so he hugs her and tells her not to worry, as he'll be right behind her, so she should go. After that, the girl leaves the city holding her mother's hand, and her dad says her survival is his proof of life. Only by the passing on of feelings from one to another, they can transcend death. Meanwhile, at the Ramza Kingdom royal castle, the head chancellor informs the king that there has been some confusion, but the evacuation of the people is proceeding smoothly. At the rate they're going, they should be able to complete the evacuation by sunrise. Also, he whispers to the king that the prince and the queen left with the help of a neighboring country. The king says he sees. Then he asks how the business association is, and a knight nervously says yes and informs him that the place was empty. They all ran away. So the king worriedly asks if there's no hope for material aid, as they have no idea what kind of attack the underworld king will use. This puts them at a disadvantage. He finds it hard to believe that the execution of a single witch sent from Ildana would actually end up summoning the underworld king. And with so little time left until sunrise, they can't even wait for Grinia, so even though they let their people escape, he questions if they can leave them a country to return to. But then, a holy knight tells the king that they've still got strength, though the earlier skirmish slightly weakened them. Ramza still has renowned holy knights and mages, and with all their strength combined, they should be able to fight any monster that comes their way. So the knight tells his king that Ramza will not perish as long as they're here, as the knights all stand beside him looking confident and ready to fight. The king gets amazed by them as he says how reliable, and tells them that he leaves the future of this country in their hands. In a forest elsewhere, as night falls, Osamu and Iris sit in front of a campfire, while low-class spirits float around them. Iris asks Osamu if it's okay to make a fire, and Osamu tells her not to worry, as he has placed a concealment spell around them. Besides, he doesn't think they have the time to be searching for them. Iris says right, then she gladly thanks him for helping her, as in the end God never came to help her, not even once. It's always he who rushes to her side. Osamu says Almaja is cold-heartless. It's just weird. Iris laughs and says really, she wonders why she believed. Then Osamu says with a serious look on his face that he'll destroy that country. He adds that a lot of humans will die, far more humans than the holy knights he killed in the Eldera forest. Osamu asks Iris if she doesn't hate it when people from her country die. Hearing that, Iris thinks about it for a bit. Then she asks, must one love another necessarily? Must one be angry and disgusted at the act of killing? Normally yes, that's how it should be. But it's been burned into her mind and won't go away. The gazes of the people in the city, the way they looked at her as she was being killed. Hurry up and die already, that was the look on their faces. So Iris frustratedly asks if she really has to say please don't kill them, even to people like that. She gets up and reluctantly says these feelings. She's disqualified as both a human and a holy knight, but she's already a witch. Hearing that, Osamu smiles at her and says, then he's relieved. He can kill without hesitation the next day, which stirs something inside Iris. After that, she hurriedly walks up to him and sits beside him. She then rests her head on his shoulders and giggles. Osamu asks what it is, and Iris says it's nothing. The next day, early in the morning, all the holy knights and mages have been gathered as they are ready to take on Hades. The king taunts him to come and asks, "Whence comest thou?" He says that both inside and outside the country, skilled magicians and holy knights await him. No demon, no matter what it is, can defeat their country's elite soldiers, so he asks how he plans on fighting with a witch who's on the verge of death. Meanwhile, Osamu floats high up and quite a bit far from the capital with Iris and asks, well, if they shall do this. Iris asks how exactly he's going to destroy the country, and from so far away. Osamu shows her a rock and says he'll blow up the whole place, which shocks Iris and terrifies her at the same time. He explains that even if they kill the people, ideology doesn't die, so he thought he should wipe out the entire culture in which the idea is rooted along with its soil. Iris asks such large-scale magic, if it's the 10th tier of fire, fire dragon breath, or if it's the 10th tier of earth, great meteorite, or she asks him if he can actually use forbidden magic. Osamu says he doesn't know if this is a forbidden magic, but by his calculations, a single blow would wipe out the country. Iris stutteringly says that's totally on the level of a divine curse. Then Osamu tosses up the rock in his hand and a new type of magic circle forms around it, which surprises Iris. Osamu says it's third-dimensional and shrinking of the magic circles. He explains that due to the complexity of the magic, a vast amount of magical power was required, making it difficult to reproduce. But it's finally taken shape now. Iris seems astonished by it and tells Osamu that she likes it. It's amazing. What it is, she's very curious. Wow, Osamu gets a bit taken aback by that. Then he explains that first, he has a pebble, then he's going to build a third-dimensional magic circle with high magic power and formulas, as several magic circles show up around them at once. Iris gets amazed to see so many magic circles, and Osamu continues that substance conversion, high-density magic protection, reaction acceleration magic barrier, thermal energy conversion process, and complete thermal conversion of energy combine and organize the above magic. After that, the pebble gathers all the magic energy from the magic circles around it, and Iris says the simple rock has turned into a pitch-black sphere. Osamu explains that he used matter transmutation to turn the rock into antimatter, and she can probably see the black lightning erupting with high-density magic. Then he goes on about how the antimatter is made to react instantly and how the phenomenon of death magic is used to convert life forces into magical power and absorb it. But Iris's bird brain couldn't understand it. Osamu also says that from a distance, it's just a sphere and he'll send it to them, as he never said anything about attacking head-on. After a while, a holy knight standing on the Ramsar royal castle's outer walls notices something suddenly appear in the sky above them. He wonders what it is. He questions if it's teleportation magic, and where on earth it came from. Everyone notices it as a small black sphere falls from above onto the castle walls. Immediately, it causes an enormous explosion of death magic, which can be seen from afar by the citizens who evacuated, and shocks them. Witnessing such monstrous destruction, they get on their knees crying for their loved one, while the little girl asks her mom what that big black thing is, as over there is their house and dad. After a while, as the death magic dissipates, the rock returns to normal and falls into a pool of water. An enormous pool of water inside a massive crater where the capital of Ramsar Kingdom was just moments ago. Iris sees all of that with her eyes but seems indifferent toward them. Then Osamu says high density of magic power is headed this way, and then he tells it to come. As he starts absorbing all of the magical energy that came out of the life forces of all the holy knights and mages he just killed into him and feels tremendous power. But the moment Osamu finishes absorbing the magic power, he feels a spark inside him. He understands that there's that voice again. He hears it every time he evolves. The voice shouts out his evolved name as his appearance changes again, and he wearily says, "Further evolution, Alpha Spirit, Primordial Demon Spirit." Iris surprisedly tells him that he changed again. It seems his hair has grown even longer, and his magical power has also extraordinarily increased. Osamu understands that each time he accepts death, he grows stronger as a monster, and recalls in his previous life his sister telling him she'll never cut her hair again from then on. So then he says Takemitsu Osamu is dead. He'll live as Shu Archlight in order not to die, to avoid being killed. He'll live in this world with Iris, which makes her happy. He found that overnight, the kingdom of Ramsar perished. Its truth was spread by the people who escaped, and instantly the whole continent knew about it. He He realizes that some are afraid, some are confused, and some found hope. But no one knows the fate of the two in the maelstrom. 1 month later in a faraway forest, Iris huffs and puffs as she runs as fast as she can from a werewolf who's chasing her. Iris turns back and irritatedly says, "It's so persistent," so she hits it with her magic, Wind's Grace, and the werewolf gets knocked out dead. Then Iris tells it she's not weak anymore. After that, she returns to Shu and Shu welcomes her back, with a bunch of men fallen unconscious around him. Iris tells him that she's back and she sees he had visitors. Shu says they probably wandered in here by accident. Then he says they should go through their stuff. Maybe there's something they can use. Iris excitedly says she got it, and it'd be nice if they brought some food with them. After that, she looks through the men's stuff while she drools thinking, bread is good, meat is also good. Then Shu tells her that he has been thinking why they don't go to town. He explains that they've been hiding in the forest for a month. He doesn't need sleep or good, but that's not the case for Iris. She tells him that she's okay, he shouldn't take this immortal body lightly, but then her stomach grumbles due to hunger, so she embarrassedly holds her stomach. Then Shu asks if it isn't the case that she wants to eat fluffy bread. Iris cries and says she wants to eat fluffy bread. Shu suggests for now they should go northwest from here to the Republic of Elise. There they can earn money and secure shelter. However, Iris asks if that'll go well. It seems like they're on the most wanted list as she finds some in the men's luggage. Shu says they should try their best somehow. Then he says, well, if he uses magical concealment and puts on the hood, maybe it'll work. If he materializes as well, and he won't be able to do any regular jobs, so he'll have to do something shady, like a bodyguard. Right then, Iris calls him and requests him with a smile that from now on, no matter what happens, they should always be together. Shu also smiles and says, yes, always. He understands that one cannot resist the approaching death, but the girl who cannot die and the living king of death, if one's destiny is death itself, then it might just work out. So then Iris says, well, they should go, and if her identity is exposed and she's surrounded by soldiers, she'll say this to scatter them. That the king of the underworld is coming through, as they excitedly start heading toward the nearest country.